Welcome inside a Monday edition of the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning producing today's show. What a weekend it was! I mean, if we had to rank the different events this weekend of what was your favorite, what game event were you most invested in, I don't know how I would do it. Obviously, the Eagles win yesterday in a game that was maybe one of the most painful games to watch, but it's not how you win them in the NFL. It's getting W's and crossing that off your list and moving on to the next one. And the Eagles did that yesterday in ugly fashion. We'll recap it all. I got a lot of thoughts on this game for a couple of reasons. I told you on Friday, what do you need to do? You need to get pressure on Sam Darnold. He will turn the ball over. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. 3 interceptions in the game. I told you Darius Slay would get an interception, and the guy one-upped me and got 2. I told you Fletcher Cox would be back and have an impact in the game. He had a sack in the game, but I think they showed you on the broadcast the impact that Fletcher Cox is having, even though he is not showing up in the stats. And I know people kept trying to break this down. I said to myself, I don't know what tape people watch, but what I'm seeing is Fletcher Cox getting double-teamed a lot and Javon Hargrave really prospering from it, which happened early in the game. They double-teamed Fletcher Cox. Javon Hargrave got a sack. Well, you know what the Carolina Panthers decided to do? I got a new idea for them. Let's double-team this guy who keeps getting all the sacks. They double-teamed Javon Hargrave, and what happened? Fletcher Cox got a sack. He had an impact on the game. He had a tackle behind the line. He had a sack yesterday. He had a couple of quarterback hits. It was really Fletcher Cox's best game of the season statistically, but it's a game that he's been really having a lot of the season. We had that. We also throw into the mix that the Eagles yesterday offensively were just dreadful. It was another awful, wretched game plan by Nick Sirianni that really, thanks to Jalen Hurts, who did not have his best statistical showing yesterday, but it was Jalen Hurts who really pulled them out of the abyss there because he kind of took matters into his own hand. He made a big throw. The Quez Watkins throw is a big one there. He makes that throw to Goddard. It's a big one. And obviously, he ends up making the 2-point conversion throw to, not that that made the difference in the game, but he really did. I mean, think about it. If they kick a field goal, they would have won that game. Carolina, if he doesn't get the 2-point conversion, he at least put him in position to at least tie the game with a field goal. And I didn't forget the fact that it's a 2-point conversion. I thought it was the throw that Hurts made rolling out to his right, and the throw that he made was just a zip in there to Devonta Smith. There's so much on the offensive side, but I want to talk about the defensive side of the ball because I asked the question a lot last week. All right? I asked the question a lot. You played Atlanta and you played San Francisco. You held those two offenses in check. I mean, Atlanta and San Francisco didn't do anything against Philadelphia's offense realistically. You played Dallas and you played Kansas City, and you got lambasted. And I'm not saying that that takes you off the hook. I mean, but obviously, Dallas and Kansas City, they have different goals and aspirations. Although Kansas City, I want to get into the Kansas City thing in just a minute because it ties into the Eagles. So what I said last week was, let's see the Eagles defense and how it kind of matches up against a team that does not have Super Bowl aspirations. You don't see Dallas's offense every week. You don't see Kansas City's offensive weapons every week. You do see Atlanta, San Francisco, Carolina, the Raiders. You see offenses who are more on par with Atlanta and San Francisco than you do Dallas and Kansas City. Is that fair to say? Yes. Well, we saw yesterday that when Philly's defense played against Carolina level of offense, they dominated that game in the second half. For God's sakes, Jonathan Gannon's defense won the Eagles the game yesterday. Jonathan Gannon's defense won the game for the Eagles yesterday. And I bring it into Kansas City against Buffalo. How many people were watching that game at halftime last night? Did you hear what Tony Dungy said at halftime last night? Josh, did you catch it? Did anybody hear what Tony Dungy said at halftime last night that ties into the Eagles defense and the Kansas City Chiefs and that game last night? What Tony Dungy said last night is the Buffalo Bills are playing the perfect defense against Kansas City. They are playing Tampa cover 2. They have their safeties back, and they are making Kansas City beat them down the middle. What did Philadelphia do against Tampa? So it's not that Jonathan Gannon's playing the wrong defense. He's got the wrong personnel, or he just doesn't have good enough personnel. Buffalo last night stopped Kansas City by playing the same defense the Eagles played against Kansas City. It just tells you Philadelphia just doesn't have the right players. Now, you might say, well, then why are they playing a defense if they don't have the right players? Guess what? If they played a blitzing style of defense against Patrick Mahomes, they wouldn't have gave up 40. They would have given up 60. So, maybe Jonathan Gannon does have a clue. Maybe he does know what he's doing. If he watched the tape of Kansas City and he saw what Sean McDermott and his staff saw, Sean McDermott decreed that we need to play cover 2 against Kansas City. John Gannon decided we need to play cover 2 against Kansas City. Well, Sean McDermott's got better players than Jonathan Gannon does. By the way, Jordan Poyer was drafted by Howie Roseman. And now the Bills have him. And he's the best safety in the league. One of, anyway. He's Pro Football Focus's #1 rated safety. He was a 7th-round pick. The Eagles just let him go. But think about that. There's so much in this game that really we can get our hands dirty with. So I want to see what you guys took from the game, because obviously it was a dirty game. What I took from the game was, look, people thought that Carolina was good. People thought that Carolina was a solid team that had a good defense. They do have a good defense. That's one of the problems that the Eagles had yesterday was you were playing against a team that had a really good defense. And your offense suffered from it because, well, I would say this. I don't think Nick Sirianni had a very good game plan yesterday. I thought the game plan was poor from Nick Sirianni. I mean, hey, I get it. You like the wide receiver screen. That's not working. One of the problems the Eagles have on the wide receiver screen, if you haven't noticed, their receivers aren't very big. So when they catch the ball, you need receivers that can block down the field. Well, Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor aren't great downfield blockers, and Devonta Smith, if you haven't noticed, isn't the biggest guy in the world. So that wide receiver bubble screen thing, it doesn't work if you're going to call it play in and play out. You can utilize that from time to time. Look, free advice to Nick Sirianni. You have a weapon in Kenneth Gainwell. You need to utilize that kid more. I know everybody says Sanders. Gainwell's the kid they need to play. I mean, if I'm Howie Roseman, I'm trying to take calls right now on Miles Sanders. They don't know how to use them. They don't know what to do with them. So if I'm him, look, Kenneth Gainwell, to me, he's your version. I'm not saying he's Alvin Kamara. I'm not saying that he's Christian McCaffrey, but he's your version of that. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He has good hands. You can do a lot with Gainwell. They just don't know what to do with Sanders. They just don't know what he is. He's not a bell cow back. He's not great at catching the ball out of the backfield. He's a big play guy, and they don't have a big play offense. I thought the game plan was just absolutely horrible yesterday, and they made an adjustment that the Carolina Panthers just could not adjust to late in that game. So I give Sirianni and his offensive staff some credit that they made a late adjustment on the RPO, and they had Jalen Hurts tuck and run the ball, and that really was the difference in the game. Jalen Hurts made 2 big runs late in that game that turned out to be a big difference. Let me get you the numbers on the text board, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Hit us up there if you're watching the show live on our YouTube stream. I definitely want to hear what you guys think out there. And if you have the free mobile app, you can download the app and message us through the phone. So there's so much to unpack on this game. Last week, the story, and the week prior to the story was how bad the Eagles' defense was. And I tweeted out this weekend, to which, some people thought my tweet was a little giving Jonathan Gannon a free pass. And I said, contrary, no, I'm not giving Jonathan Gannon a free pass. It doesn't mean because you're playing Kansas City and you're playing Dallas that, you get a free pass. It's okay to say they just don't have the personnel. What I said in my tweet was, hey, they've played two teams that were really good offensively, and they played two teams that were not so good offensively. So let's find out, right? Let's find out if they're the team that played the two teams that weren't so good, or if they're the team that played the two very good teams. And I don't know that we got the answer, because one game doesn't mean who you are, but I think you have to lean more towards the fact that the defense against offenses who are not Dallas and not Kansas City are pretty good. I'm not saying this is a great defense, but my point is it's not as bad as the previous 2 weeks. The Eagles' defense performed fine versus teams that aren't Dallas and Kansas City. This was a game to see if they were more the Atlanta and San Francisco defense or the Dallas and Kansas City defense. Do we have that answer? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Look, the Eagles' defense settled in. It kept that game within reach. The Eagles' defense won the game for them. The Eagles' defense won the game for them. That is not something that we thought would happen. I think you got to give the Eagles' defense a lot of credit today. And I think, look, as I pointed out, 23 points against Atlanta and San Francisco, 83 points against Dallas and Kansas City. Dallas and Kansas City's offense, different animals than Atlanta and San Francisco. Most teams are more like Atlanta and San Francisco than they are Dallas and Kansas City. And this is an interesting week to see where they stand. And they stood pretty high. Pretty high. What say you? 609-403-0973 on the text board. Got a lot of messages coming in on the video stream. If you're watching the show on our YouTube channel, Jeff says, man, our defense was so fun to watch. Jeff, I wouldn't, it's not like it's, first off, and I picked Philadelphia to win the game. My score was 29-24. Reasons are, one, Carolina's line is not very good. They had an injury on the line. That changes things. McCaffrey being out, I thought that was a little bit of a factor, although Hubbard played well, ran the ball well, went over 100 yards. They had problems. The Eagles were able to get pressure with four guys. That's the difference in the game, really. Right? That's the difference in the game, is that you can get pressure with four guys. Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat. Those three guys really played good games. I thought Milton Williams played a good game yesterday. You know who else played pretty well? Believe it or not, was Jannard Avery played very well. And Davion Taylor showed a little flash yesterday. The penalty's still a big problem. We'll get into that a little bit later. More messages coming in on the video stream. Jalen says, Howie may have pulled off one of the best trades in the history of the league this year. Devonta Smith and the current third pick of the draft for Jalen Waddle. Well, I mean, Miami looks like a very bad team right now. So you're right. They might get a top 5 pick with that Miami pick. So it definitely is a difference maker. Jalen goes on to say, the pressure rattled Darnold. He saw ghosts, except this time they were real. Well, I said all day Friday, Jalen, Darnold is what he is. He's a guy that turns the ball over, and that the Eagles had to make sure that they got enough pressure that he would do what he always does, turn the ball over. Chris Hernandez is watching the show on YouTube. He says, I think the Eagles are allergic to running the ball. Sanders has breakaway abilities, and Gainwell has Austin Eckler potential. Chris, I agree with you. He's got to run the ball more. He has got to mix that in more. He has to learn that that is going to help Jalen Hurts. Look, this offense is top weapons. All right. Devonta Smith is a very good, polished, young receiver. He's only going to keep getting better. But your best weapons is the tight end, the duo at tight end. Those are your best weapons, and the running game. And then you build off of that with the young guys. Quez Watkins has overtaken Rager as the number 2 weapon on the wide receiver peg. But they've got to do a better job. Now, I will say this. I think that Hurts missed a bunch of guys yesterday that were open down the seam. He is missing guys down the seam a lot. And I don't know if that's because the middle of the field is not something that they call a lot for. But, man, he had a couple of times receivers right down the seam of the field that Jalen Hurts is just simply not seeing. There's the potential for more big plays in this offense if Hurts keeps his eyes down the field. 609-403-0973. Let's go to the text board and read off some of your text messages. Mike, Nick Sirianni is doing a horrible job as head coach. All right, let's stop there and break this down. 1, I don't know that he's doing a horrible job as the head coach. I think he's doing a horrible job as the offensive play caller. Because quite frankly, as the head coach, the team has all 3 phases of the game. The only thing I will say as the head coach is the penalties. And we talked on Friday about that with Carolina tight end Colin Thompson. And I asked him how much you put on the coach on that. And if you want to listen to his answer, go check it out on our YouTube channel. As the head coach, I think he's done an okay job. As the play caller, I think he's done a horrible job. He has no answers for all the penalties after the game. I'm going to go back to the text message, okay? The text message says he has no answers for all the penalties after the game. He has struggled. He has a struggling quarterback, and he refuses to run the ball. All his talk is nonsense, competition. The best players aren't being involved. Watkins, Goddard, Gainwell need to be involved more. All right, a lot to unpack there. 1, he has no answers for all the penalties game after game. Here's the thing I'll say about that. Everybody always wants to blame the head coach for the discipline and the penalties of a team, which I don't know who else you blame. But realistically, like the penalty that Alex Singleton gets for a face mask, how does the coach fix him? It's an inadvertent face mask. His hand hits the guy's face mask. It's a penalty. So I get the fact that the team's undisciplined. Like the late hits, the one that Singleton gets where the guy slides. Even Olsen talked about it on the broadcast. He's like, what is the guy supposed to do? This is coming from a former Carolina Panther who played offense. And he's saying, what is Alex Singleton supposed to do? He's running full speed at the defensive player. How does he stop himself? I've asked that question for years. I get it. It's frustrating. And we want to say somebody has to take the blame for everything. That's just the society that we live in. We have this feel of they get penalties. It's their fault. It's somebody's fault that it's not getting cleaned up. I have to imagine Nick Sirianni let them know that this can't keep happening, and they've done things. Alex Singleton's hand hitting the offensive player's face mask, I just don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you teach that scenario from happening. It's an inadvertent situation. It's just something that you can't really teach. Now, the one that I will blame Nick Sirianni on is Greg Ward, the pick in the end zone. That is on Nick Sirianni as not teaching his receivers or whoever the wide receiver coach is, and Nick Sirianni has a hand in all that. So I would say that he gets blamed for something like that. What did Colin Thompson tell us Friday about going off sides? You see, he went off sides. That's not the coach's fault. You know, he said that was just on me. That's my fault. It's not my coach doesn't tell me that, you know. So a lot of times I think we want to put so much blame on the discipline of a team on the coach. it's mainly because, in my opinion, we don't have anybody else to blame for that. How about these players are just undisciplined players? Now you say, well, then you discipline them. You could make the guy run 500 yards of gassers. That doesn't mean in the moment that the game is being played that his hand is not going to inadvertently hit someone's face mask. There are certain penalties that are on the discipline of a team and other ones not so much. So, again, Sirianni, I think, is doing a terrible job. I will agree that he's doing a terrible job as a play caller. But realistically, if Sirianni went in and gave Gannon the business the other day, guess what? Gannon's defense stepped up. He got the message. Gannon's defense got the message and played a terrific game. All this talk, nonsense, competition, the best players being involved, I definitely agree. This goes back to he's not doing a good job as an offensive play caller. But they got a block punt. They got a defensive effort that nobody out there in the listening audience would have predicted. And to me, that means the head coach did a pretty good job during the week getting his coaches ready for the game. 609-403-0973. Couple more text messages coming in that I want to get to. 609-403-0973. Hit me up there. Mike, Carolina has a good D, but their offense stinks, especially without McCaffrey. Darnold, to me, is one of the worst quarterbacks, and not to mention, they only beat the Jets and a Saint team with no coaches. They're not a good team either. Well, I agree with what you're saying, but that was kind of my point, is that the Eagles, their schedule is filled with more Carolinas, Atlantas, and San Franciscos than it is Dallas and Kansas City. So, yeah, Carolina, in my opinion, is an average team. But the rest of your schedule is filled with more Carolinas. I mean, you're going to play Tampa. I said the other day, there's two teams. I'm going to say three now. I'm going to say three. You got Tampa Thursday night. You've got the Chargers coming up, and you've got Dallas. Those three teams, I don't think you're beating. The rest of the teams on this schedule, Vegas, Detroit, Denver, New Orleans, the Giants, the Jets, Washington, the Giants, Washington. The rest of those teams are more Carolina than they are anything else. These are the quarterbacks that you have left on your schedule. Brady, Carr, Goff, Herbert, Bridgewater, Winston, Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, what's the kid's name in Washington? Heineke. Yeah, I mean, you have kind of gotten through. You got through at 2-3. You have gotten through the difficult part of that schedule. Now you have a couple spaced out, Tampa Bay, Chargers, and then you play Dallas the last week of the season. You're right. Darnold is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and no McCaffrey. But your defense showed that most teams in the league are that team. Most teams in the league are what Carolina is. You know, they have an average quarterback with average weapons. Their offensive line's not very good. Most of the teams you're going to face the rest of the way are more that than they are Dallas and Kansas City. That's what I tried to say on Friday. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Download the free mobile app. Don't forget, Eagles Buccaneers tickets. I'm giving a club box pair of tickets away for this week's game. You can enter now on our website, 973ESPN.com. And another entry is coming at 2:55. I'll give you the code word of the day. Enter it on our website, 973ESPN.com. I'm going to announce the winning name tomorrow during Tuesday with Thompson. Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Lot to unpack on a Monday. What's the best sporting event this weekend? What was it? My options are this, at 973 ESPN on Twitter, because it was an epic weekend. So these are your choices. What was the best event of the weekend? The baseball playoff drama that I got to get into, the college football upsets, the boxing match Wilder Fury 3, and the Eagles win and all the NFL. Anything else I missed? Because those four right there, I don't even know how to fit them all in today. It's the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. 2:31, I'm Mike Gill. Sports Bash, live, 97.3 ESPN. Mike, I can't pick one. I got a tie between the Fury fight and the Alabama upset. Both smokers. Love it. Yeah, I saw the fight. I'll get into that. Phil D checks in. He says, Mike, Wilder Fury was unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, if I could say I got a chance to watch one of the events over again, I don't know. This is hard, man. So I'll tell you what happened. Josh, what was your top event of the weekend? Which game was like the one that you were most invested in? The Eagles game was so aesthetically unpleasing.
Well, for me, it was Penn State, Iowa, because that was my pick of the week.
Penn State, Iowa can go pound sand.
That was my pick of the week.
That was my fourth game. Actually, that was the third game in my four-teamer. And I needed Penn State to win or just cover. The spread was what? They were getting 2.5?
Yep.
They lost by 3.
Yep.
That quarterback was so bad. He was an unplayable player. And unplayable.
And don't forget, the reason why Penn State's backup was so bad is because Will Levis, they would not let him compete for the job, so he left for Kentucky.
Unbelievable. So that game screwed me out of $900, basically.
Oh, my goodness.
A half a point screws me out of $900 because I had East Carolina. They won the game outright, as Nadu told us on Thursday. They were getting 10. They won the game outright. Yep. I had hit the 2 games Friday. I took Cincinnati over Temple, and I took Arizona State over Stanford. There were the 2 games that Nadu and I talked about on Thursday. We both loved those games. I took Penn State. They screwed me. Yesterday, so the Penn State game was a great game, but that quarterback was so bad that I can't put it as my best of the weekend. Even though it was a good game, he was so bad. That's the only reason why the game was good.
Yes and no. I thought Penn State.
If they had a quarterback with a pulse, they would have won that game.
I mean, to me, the biggest story of that game was actually less about the quarterbacks than was about the fact that Penn State's defense probably overperformed anybody's expectations in that game. They went into Iowa and just kept punching them in the face.
Yeah, again, the quarterback play was so bad, I can't rank it with these other events.
That's fine.
So you're saying Penn State, Iowa was your favorite event of the weekend?
That was the one I was most, well, your initial was one I was most invested in.
Okay. Well, because you had money on it.
Of course.
All right. But what of the games was like the best game? Like this game had you captured?
I mean, for me, if I had to really nail it down, I mean, the Packers-Bengals game was ridiculous.
That was a good one.
That thing was nuts. I mean, all those missed field goals, I couldn't believe I was watching.
I mean, Alabama, Texas A&M's 41-38. That thing's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
But you know what the problem
with that? The Red River Shootout.
Well, the Red River Shootout was amazing.
Unbelievable.
We had that here on 97.3 ESPN.
And speaking of here on 97.3 ESPN, the Notre Dame Virginia Tech game was crazy.
And by the way, don't forget, that game was a pick'em by the time that game started on the bet lines.
Yeah.
So the odds makers were literally telling you that game was a coin flip, and it was great.
The college football Saturday was great. But then, you had the baseball Saturday night, which you had the Rays and the Red Sox game, which was unbelievable, right? The game on Saturday night, Rays and Red Sox. No, it wasn't Rays and Red Sox Saturday. That game was on Friday night. That was the game Friday night. That was like 5-0 Rays, and then the Red Sox came back, and they ended up winning 14-6. But last night, after the 4 o'clock games ended, there was a little gap there.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking all over for the Rays and Red Sox. I can't find it anywhere. Well, it's on the MLB network, okay? So I go to that game, and it's in the 9th. Well, the game went 13 innings, and you saw how wild that game ended, right? It had the ball hit off the wall, it hit the right fielder, and then went back over the wall. So they had that whole situation, and nobody ever saw anything like that happen because the ground rules and the fact that the wall at Fenway Park is so low, the ball hits the wall, it caroms off the wall, hits the warning track, hits the player,
right,
and then goes back over the fence. They called it a ground rule double. The Rays clearly would have scored a run there. They send the runner back to the base, and they don't get any runs. Then the Red Sox come up and hit a 2-run homer to win it in the bottom of the 13th.
And don't forget, this is the second time in this series there's been something that's happened because of the strange ground rules. Remember what happened in Tampa a couple games ago?
Right. Well, I will say this. I think that, in the end, even if they let that run score, Pavetta last night was unbelievable. Nick Pavetta, of all guys, comes in the game and just absolutely shuts down the Rays.
How much
But
does that pain
that
people
game
to
was
say that?
so good. That game was so good from the 9th to the 13th that I forgot about the Sunday night football game starting and never went back to that until it was like midway through the first.
Well, it's a good thing with the rain delay then.
No, the rain delay didn't start until halftime.
No, but I meant like you had at least time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get back into it.
The Wilder Fury fight,
Yeah.
may have been the best heavyweight fight I've ever watched.
Wow. Really?
Yep.
I mean, it was amazing to watch. It was an amazing spectacle.
The best question. The guy asked Fury, what was it like to watch that kind of fight? He goes, I didn't watch it. I was a part of it. I'm telling you right now, Wilder Fury, if you didn't see it, and it's going to be on replay wherever you can get a replay of it, that fight might have been the best heavyweight fight I've ever seen. Now, that's not saying much because in recent years, there hasn't been a lot of great ones.
No, there
Not
hasn't.
like that was like a middleweight fight. That was like two guys just slugging each other back. 5 knockdowns.
Yeah.
5.
And don't forget the one knockdown. It almost wasn't a knockdown at first.
The Fury knockdowns were kind of weak.
Yeah.
Like I think he just kind of lost his footing on the first one. All right, we're going to talk
I
about all of it.
wobbly, yeah.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, the weekend recap. I don't even know that we can recap the whole weekend with this segment. We're going to try. Coming up next. All right, we got a lot to do in the weekend recap. Mike McGarry's appearance today is brought to you by Calvi Electric, offering residential services for your home and business online, calvielectric.com. All right, let's dive into it all. I'm sure that Mike's got a lot on his mind today. You can check him out in the press of Atlantic City. As where do we even begin, Mike? I know you're a baseball guy too, so we'll start with the baseball. I guess let's go right to that because that was maybe one of the biggest moments of the series of the playoffs. People are going nuts about this. Now, I'm a Rays guy. I like the Rays. I'm cheering for the Rays, but I don't think they got screwed last night.
I don't think they did either. I mean, that's baseball, right? I mean,
it's baseball in Boston.
Well, it's baseball where you have unique stadiums like that, right? Where, that's like saying, okay, the ball rolls into the ivy at Wrigley Field and a team gets screwed on because that becomes a ground rule double. It's baseball in Tampa where they have a skywalk over the field and pop-ups sometimes hit the skywalk, and that's part of the ground rules. That's what makes baseball great. The difference in the stadiums. I mean, Yankee fans could be complaining because Stanton hit 2 rockets that hit the wall, the big wall in left field. If it wasn't for the Green Monster, those balls would still be going and would have been home runs in any other park. That's what makes baseball great, is you get moments like that. You see something that you've never seen before and may never see again.
Yeah, so just to let the people in who may not have saw it because it was on the Major League, it was on the MLB Network. You might have been at the Chiefs-Bills game getting ready for that when this happened, or that game might have even started. The ball hits the wall. The wall is so low that it ricochets, bounces off the right fielder, and then bounces back over the wall. Well, the guy from first, he had already scored on the play. So what are you making of the people who are now insinuating that people can just pick the ball up and throw it over the wall purposely? Now, I don't think that's apples and oranges to me.
Yeah, that's ridiculous to take that argument to that level. The ball clearly came back, ricocheted off the wall, hit the right fielder, and bounced over the wall. Everything was unintentional. I don't think, if you need to put a rule in to clarify that a player is not allowed to pick up a ball in the gap and then throw it into the stands, basically, and not allow a runner to score from first base. If we have to do that, put that on the books. I guess we have to do that. But we've lived for more than 100 years of baseball without that happening, and I think we're pretty safe. This was obviously unintentional. It was a wacky thing that happened, and that's what happens in baseball when you have different parks, different wall sizes, and everything else.
All right, so the Red Sox take the 2-1 series lead in that one, which is kind of a surprise. And then the rest of the game, the rest of these series, that one has been the best one so far, obviously. You got games going on today. We'll have you up to date. Tomorrow night, we'll have games here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, did you see the fight, Mike?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Oh, okay, good. You watched the fight. Now, I said that may have been one of the best heavyweight fights that I ever saw. Would you put it in that tier?
Yes, I would. I'd put it in my top 3 or 4, 5 heavyweight fights, I've ever seen. Obviously, the Thriller in Manila, the Ali Frazier 3, I think one of the great ones. The Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield fights, I think, were outstanding. And that fight right there, and I thought you said something before that hit on why the fight was so great. It was like watching middleweights fight, right? A lot of times when you watch heavyweights, there's not a lot of action. There's not a lot of punches being thrown. There's not a lot of the fighters aren't busy because they're so big. Well, those two guys, fought at the pace of middleweights or welterweights, and that's what made that fight so great and compelling.
Now, I guess the question is, everybody, anytime there's a big boxing match and you get a good one or a bad one, the bad ones seem to outweigh the good one. And you'll hear, well, that's why boxing has issues. That's a great fight. But the problem is now, if Wilder can't beat Fury, who the heck can beat that guy?
Well, there's somebody out there. I think the problem with boxing is, right, you have this great fight on Saturday night. And now the question is, when will we see Fury again? When will he be able to build on the momentum of this appearance? Will he fight 3 months from now? Will he fight a year from now? Will it be 18 months from now? That's, I think, boxing's problem, is that these guys don't don't stay busy enough. I mean, I'm an old guy. I prefer boxing over ultimate fighting, cage fighting, whatever you call it. But I think one of the things that cage fighting does well is they keep their guys busy. They don't disappear for the most part for like 1.5 or 2 year stretches. I mean, who knows what Fury's going to do now? You think, if he fought again in January or, February of next year, he'd be a lot of momentum, but we don't know when we're going to see him again.
Yeah, I don't know when we'll see him again. And quite frankly, if we do, you're not going to get someone at the caliber of Wilder. Just had this look on his face the whole time, Mike, of, I just can't beat this guy. Like, this guy's just better than me. Like, didn't he have that look of just like disbelief of, look at me, look at that guy, and I just can't figure out a way to beat him?
Well, he certainly went in there and left it all out there. He seemed to go in there and say, look, my only chance to beat him, like you said, is to land a big right hand and hope that ends it. He did knock him down twice, but Fury is a big guy. What strikes me is just the difference in size between those two guys. I mean, Fury is 270 something pounds and Wilder's like 238 pounds. And that's crazy when you think like Muhammad Ali in his prime was like fighting at 215, 210. So it's just crazy to think about the difference in weights. But Wilder's only hope was to load up that right hand and sort of hope it landed on Fury's chin and hope this time Fury stayed down. And that wasn't the case, but you got to give Wilder a lot of credit for going out there. And, he definitely did not take the safe route. He went in there to try to win the fight.
Right. All right. So if you get a chance to watch it, if you didn't see it live, go back and watch the fight. It was an epic battle between Wilder and Fury number 3. All right. Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. The Eagles game was aesthetically unpleasing to watch, but they picked up a win. Did we learn anything about this team with the way they won that game yesterday?
No, it's a win in the NFL, which you're never going to turn your nose up at. So the Eagles are 2-3. Basically, the Cowboys are 4-1. The Eagles are two games back of the Cowboys. Basically, they're 3 games back because the Cowboys have a win head-to-head. I think the NFC East division is over. I think the Eagles won that game because Sam Darnold was awful. Threw 3 of the worst passes, you can see an NFL quarterback throw, and they blocked a punt. So I don't think you answered any future questions about the Eagles down the road. I don't come out of that game saying Jalen Hurts is my guy. Right. I have more faith in Nick Sirianni and his coaching staff. Hey, they won a football game. That's great. But long term, I don't think it answered anything.
What about the fact that they gave up 83 points in 2 weeks. Gannon had been getting ripped, and really the defense carried them to the win.
Well, I think a lot of that is due to Sam Darnold carrying them to the win. And I'm a USC guy, and I thought Darnold was a lot better, but he looked like the guy who played for the New York Jets. And unfortunately for Sam, you can't blame this one on Adam Gase because he was nowhere near on the sidelines. Matt Rule was. Darnold just played a horrendous football game, and the Eagles were able to take advantage, plus the blocked punt. So I guess you can say, hey, the defense played better. Fletcher Cox showed he was alive. He actually made a tackle. He made a sack. The deep big play Slay finally made some big plays. He intercepted 2 passes. So you can say the defense maybe came back to life a little bit. But overall, do I feel any better about the Eagles, today than I did at 12:55 p.m. yesterday? No, but it's a win in the NFL. Good for them. Let's move on to Tampa on Thursday night.
Right. Well, and one of the things I said, look, against Atlanta and San Francisco, the defense had been good. Against Dallas and Kansas City, not so good. But you're not facing Dallas and Kansas City week to week. You're facing Atlanta, San Francisco, Carolina. You're getting more of them on your schedule than you are Kansas City and Dallas.
Yeah, let's see if the defense is truly improved and Gannon's kind of getting his legs under him and Mr. I don't have a scheme all of a sudden has a scheme and he's putting players in better position. Let's see it Thursday night against Tom Brady and the wide receivers that are going to walk in here on Tampa Bay, a team that I think scored, 45 yesterday against
Well, I said Tampa Bay, the Chargers, and then you have Dallas again. Those 3 teams I think you're going to have problems with. The rest of your schedule, the Raiders, Detroit, Denver, the Giants, the Jets, Washington. You're playing Carolina pretty much.
Right. And I think yesterday the problem was, Carolina should have won that football game. Sam Darnold was terrible. And the block punt was also a huge play in the game. So like I said, a win for the Eagles. That's great. They're 2-3. Dallas is running away with the division. And I don't feel like we learned anything about the Eagles yesterday that would make me feel better about them long term.
Yeah, I know that a lot of penalties again. When people say that the team's undisciplined and they blame the coach, how can the coach, like Alex Singleton gets a face mask penalty? How do you coach? Like that's an inadvertent hand hitting the face mask. That kind of stuff. Like, is it all on the coach for this team's discipline problems?
I think it's partly on the coach. I think, you mentioned penalties like face mask and stuff like that. That's pass interference. That's inadvertent stuff that happens during a game, basically. But, the false starts, those types of penalties are definitely can be traced back to the coach and the overall team discipline. They have to, sharpen up there because they are hurting themselves too much with penalties. And a lot of times it's the same guy. So I don't know what you do there. Do you bench guys? Do you not play guys in certain situations? But the penalty thing in a lot of the penalties, I think, can be traced back to Sirianni. You have your face mask, your stuff like that. But a lot of those penalties, I mean, if the coach has got to do one thing is, discipline the football team. And I think that's on the coach.
All right. We saw the Giants yesterday, rough day, mash unit in the NFC East. Dallas is obviously the class there, but it looks like the Giants' schedule's coming up is brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal. And you start to wonder, when you look at the Giants, you start to look at a couple things. It seems to me, you say, hey, number one, Joe Judge, who everybody liked and said all the right things, you're starting to wonder now, wow, is he really the guy who we thought he was, basically? Number two, you got to say Saquon Barkley. Is he just one of these players who's just destined to be hurt all the time and get hurt in freakish ways? Yesterday, he steps on an ankle of a Cowboy and he's gone for the game. And number three, Daniel Jones, poor Daniel Jones, they can't protect him. He runs, he gets hit, concussion, he wobbles, not a good sight. Mike Glennon comes in. You're not winning many long-term football games with Mike Glennon. So kind of a hopeless situation. I always joke about growing up in New York in the 70s. I thought football was bad then. This might be worse than football in the 70s with the way the Giants and the Jets are.
30 seconds, Mike. Today, Rich Paul and the Sixers. It looks like Ben Simmons is going to come back to the Sixers sometime in the next week. Your thoughts?
If he comes back, great, but you still have the same problem. Who's scoring in the fourth quarter of playoff games? And who's creating shots for himself and his teammates? So Ben Simmons comes back, that's great. Win 45 to 50 games in the regular seasons, and then book golf course times for after the second round, because you're not getting out of the second round of the tournament at all.
Somebody disagrees with you. They're calling you. They want to take it on with you off the air. All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Thanks, man.
All right, I'll see you down the road.
AC Press McGarry. Follow him on Twitter. He'll be back on Wednesday's show, and his appearance today, it's brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business. Online, calvielectric.com. Yes, if you haven't heard the news, we'll get into it later on. Paul Hudrick at 4:40 today. Sixers officials and Rich Paul have progressed in talks over recent days on a resolution to bring Ben Simmons back to Philadelphia in the near future. All right, your Eagles key word of the day is slay, S-L-A-Y, slay. Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, to win Bucks Eagles tickets. Hour 2 of the Sports Bash starts with Grayson's Grades with Scott Grayson from Fox 29 and 97.3 ESPN.com. As Scott Grayson grades the Eagles' win over the Carolina Panthers. Grayson's Grades on the Sports Bash are brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. From Maine to Miami, nobody beats the Boardwalk deal online at boardwalkhonda.com. You take a look at who passed and who failed. Well, no Fs for the Eagles in the win. Which almost looked like a loss, but they somehow outlasted the Carolina Panthers yesterday. Let's break it down with Scott Grayson, who's on his way to Fox 29. You'll see him on the TV tonight, and he joins us now with another edition of Grayson's Grades. What's going on, Scott?
Yeah, Mike, how you doing here? A victory Monday, but yeah, I agree with you. It didn't really feel like one.
Aesthetically unpleasing as it was, they figured out a way to do it. But one guy who you didn't think helped out all that much was head coach Nick Sirianni, and he gets a D for the game. So let's start with him. D on the list. Obviously, offensively, they were a mess yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm at the point, Mike, I know we're only 5 games into this thing, but I'm at the point where I'm about to be out on Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator. I cannot figure out what his goal is when he takes the field with his offense, what his plan is, what he's trying to accomplish. Usually you try to do something to set up something else, and eventually will set up something else in a game. You just don't see any kind of semblance of any idea of what they're doing out there. And I think, quite frankly, I feel like the team won despite his poor game plan yesterday. And, I'm not necessarily saying, Nick Sirianni, the head coach, is a failure. I feel like I still need time to figure that out. But Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator, has me scratching my head every week and banging it against the wall, trying to figure out what he's doing. And yesterday did nothing more to change my mind on that. I'm just baffled at the way this team is going out and running their offense because, again, a lack of running plays until late in the game. And I feel like these opposing defenses are just waiting for them. Yesterday, I even asked a question on Twitter, is it okay? Are the Eagles not allowed to run anything vertical? Because it was all horizontal and really going nowhere. So, in my opinion, Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator, is failing right now. Nick Sirianni, the head coach, I'll still give him a little more time to figure out, but this is not going well so far.
Yeah, I agree with you on the offense. He has not had a good game plan, really, in my opinion, since the Atlanta game. I mean, last week against Kansas City, it was better, but this week was just – I thought, it's hard to say it was worse than San Francisco and Dallas, but, man, he just kept trying the bubble screens and the wide receiver screens. There was just nothing doing there. And it really was like Hurts had to take matters into his own hands late in this game. Now, you gave Hurts a C, but some of that, I mean, here's the one problem I've had with Hurts. You've talked about the vertical stuff. I think he's missing some guys down the field. There's a couple of times where guys they're shooting down the seams. He's missing the wide receivers down the seams a lot, I feel like. But you gave him a C yesterday.
Yeah, you look at his stats, and I know, the eye test is the most important thing, but when you're only completing almost 50% of your passes, just over that's not good. And I agree with you. I think he is missing some things downfield. I think he is missing some possible opportunities. I thought, I know people are upset with Zach Ertz. I thought that one throw was a little too far out that he tried to get the first down on. That could have been a better throw from Hurts. But look, when he had to, at the end of the game, he did make the throw downfield to Quez Watkins. He did make the right call, and he did use his legs to get the touchdown to give them the win. They don't get that 2-point conversion if it's anybody other than Jalen Hurts back there running that play because what he did to get away from that defender and buy time, and then he threw a perfect throw to Devontae Smith. We're seeing signs. We're seeing signs from Jalen Hurts. And last week, everything was great. It was all roses. It's not going to be that way every week in the NFL. And I thought that Jalen Hurts overall played a C game for me, but he did what he had to at the end of the game to get that fourth quarter win. And ultimately, that's what matters the most. So definitely seeing some signs of growth from Hurts in that kind of a clutch situation to make those kind of plays. And the throw, like I said, the 2-point conversion to me, that was a big time play. Both he and Devontae Smith, two young players making that play.
Yeah, I know. Let's stick on the offensive side of the ball with a couple of more here. And one of the guys that I want to put into, you gave an A to Quez Watkins. Now, obviously, He doesn't get a lot of catches or targets for that matter. But as you mentioned, he kind of takes advantage of the opportunities that are there. And you wonder when they're going to start scheming more of him into the offense.
Yeah, you just took the question right out of my mouth. I mean, that's what I'd love to ask Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator. Look, in my opinion right now, Quez Watkins is outplaying Jalen Rager. And so, therefore, I would rather
more snaps
Watkins
yesterday.
get some more of those.
He did get more snaps yesterday, yeah.
And I'd like to see more of Watkins get some opportunities called for him. I mean, that play downfield, look, his speed is obviously an asset. And you have the choice now to decide, are you going to use it to your advantage or are you not? And that's where I talked about, look, Quez Watkins seems like the right guy to me that you could set some things up on defensively by, running something horizontal, and then you fake it and go and give him the ball downfield in one-on-one coverage. I would love to see that happen more. And, look, I think Quez Watkins has earned that opportunity.
Scott, obviously, John Gannon's defense much maligned the last 2 weeks, 83 combined points in the 2 games. Well, this week you gave John Gannon a B, and there's a lot to kind of unpack off this. But first, let's start with the game plan that Jonathan Gannon had and what he showed you.
Well, first of all, he showed me a game plan that I think we can all agree we've failed to really see much of in recent weeks. So I was happy to see the fact that he had a plan. I like the fact that, quite frankly, I saw some good stunts done on the defensive line that helped to confuse the opponent's offense. It helped to get some pressure on Darnold, which in turn then, as you play it out, helped him get rid of the ball in some uncomfortable situations, and then that led to turnovers. So you see how the dominoes fall here, and I was glad to see Gannon at least, he got criticized all week. Frankly, if he didn't come out and do anything with any kind of scheme, I was going to be really surprised. So I thought that was it was good to see. Now, one thing that I heard in the post-game, conversations with the players, Darius Slay alluded to a thing that he said where basically I read between the lines for him to basically say he had more freedom. And I felt like he and Nelson were playing with a little bit more freedom, therefore a little bit more comfort and able to do more of the things that they can do. And therefore I wasn't surprised after the game he said that we saw the results we saw, which was, those 3 interceptions. So maybe he's going to rely on these veterans and give them a little bit more flexibility and freedom to play the game the way they have learned and know how, which I don't think is a bad thing. And quite frankly, you're getting more production on your defensive line this past week. So overall, I thought Gannon had his defense ready to play, and they don't win this game without that defense playing the way they did.
Yeah. Now, a couple of things off that, because last night, I don't know if you saw the halftime of the Bills-Chiefs game, right? So Tony Dungy is talking about the defense of the Bills and how great of a job they've done against Kansas City to limit that offense. And what he said was they're playing the right defense. Tampa 2, safeties back. Well, John Gannon tried that the week before. It didn't work out so well. So does Gannon actually know what he's doing? He just doesn't have the right personnel.
Well, that's been kind of my caveat on criticizing Gannon over the last few weeks, is just that I think he was going vanilla because he knew he didn't have the talent to do things. But now the pressure built up, and it was finally, hey, we got to do something with what I got and see what happens. And, I think that's part of it. Certainly the Bills' defense is more talented than this one all around. This defense is certainly lacking and has clear holes that I think teams are finding ways to exploit. The only way around it is just to get pressure on them and not give a quarterback time to look downfield and pick them apart. And frankly, I mean, that's, I know we're not going to head too much to Tampa yet, but that's the key. With Tom Brady, you got to hit him. You got to get that defensive pressure. The Eagles were doing this past week. I want to see more of from that front four. The stunts, the mixing up on where they were coming from. And you want to double team Javon Hargrave? Fine. Finally, Fletcher Cox can go get a sack. You want to double team Fletcher? Fine. Let Javon Hargrave go do what he has to do. I think that's something that Gannon needs to build off of. And I think hopefully he saw some foundation of where to find some progress with scheming up this defense.
Well, it's interesting because in your B column, you had Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox, and in the A column, you had Javon Hargrave. So it sounds like, to make that defense work, you need to have pressure from your front four. We heard that a lot with Jim Schwartz. He didn't like to blitz all that much. Well, Gannon doesn't like to blitz all that much either, but it helps when Hargrave, Sweat, and Fletcher Cox are getting A's and B's.
It absolutely does. And I think that was the biggest key, was that pressure, like I said, they forced Darnold into some bad decisions. And with a quarterback of the caliber of Sam Darnold, you're certainly not talking about a Pat Mahomes or a Dak Prescott like the last two quarterbacks they had to deal with, or a Tom Brady for that matter, who's seen literally everything that anybody in the football world has thrown defensively. So, they took advantage of a lesser quarterback. And the challenge this week is obviously going to be you're playing one of the best again, obviously the best. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to make him uncomfortable? And those front four did a good job of that yesterday, making Darnold uncomfortable and forcing him to make bad decisions. And that's what this defense, frankly, needs to do. And I heard you talking a few segments ago about, frankly, how that's the level of quarterback they're going to face a lot this year. So if they can just do that, they'll get some wins piled up as long as the defense can get back there and take care of that level of quarterback. What are they going to do when they face these better quarterbacks like Mahomes last week, Brady coming up this week?
Well, that's what I was going to bring up to you, Scott, is, hey, they did not do very well when they were challenged by elite offenses. Dallas, Kansas City, they obviously have offenses with a ton of weapons. But most of the teams that they'll see the rest of the way outside of Tampa Bay, the Chargers, and Dallas in weeks 18, most teams' offenses are more Atlanta, San Francisco, Carolina. So the way that they've played against those three opponents, does that give you some sort of hope that this team can be competitive, and who knows where this season can go?
Yeah, it does in the sense, too, that, like I said, I would love to dig a little deeper on what Darius Slay said yesterday. If Gannon's philosophy is now to let these veterans have a little bit more freedom and flexibility, and, did he go and have the conversation that I think all these NFL coaches should have with veterans? What do you like to do? What do you think you are good at? What should you do more of in a game? And if that's what he's letting some of them do, and it turned out the product we saw yesterday, you know what? Credit him for finally having the ability and the foresight to see that these guys need to play in their comfort zones. These talented veterans need to be comfortable. Let them do what they can do and do it well. Yes, I think they should be able to beat the kind of level of quarterback, you're right, they're going to face more often than not. Now I want to see what kind of scheme. Again, I put the pressure back on Gannon over these next few days. What kind of scheme in a short week are you going to be able to throw at the Bucs that maybe they weren't going to be ready for without the amount of time to practice to get ready for that they frankly normally would have? That's what I want to see. But, my fear, Mike, frankly, we all know the linebackers on this team are subpar. I got to believe that's where Brady and the Bucs are going to look to take what they can get against the Eagles defense and move the ball down the field.
Yeah, the Thursday night's obviously a huge challenge. Again, you kind of go back to facing a Dallas type of offense, a Kansas City type of offense. And one big difference there, too, is much like Dallas and Kansas City, their offensive line is kind of getting their feet under them. They haven't played together that much. But Tampa Bay has a really good offensive line. That's what Carolina does not have. That's what Atlanta does not have. Most offenses in the league have issues on their offensive line. The really good teams don't have those issues. So we'll see if John Gannon's defense can step up. But more importantly, he was able to get them to step up against a game. Look, they have 2 wins on the road right now. I mean, to say you have 2 road wins in the NFL, is that a sign of a good team? We'll see. Can they build off of that? A lot to unpack the rest of this game. Scott Grayson's grades are up right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Grayson's grades with Scott Grayson of Fox 29 and 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, Scott, thanks, man.
All right, you got it, Mike. Take care.
That's Scott Grayson. Of course, his grades are brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. From Maine to Miami, nobody beats a Boardwalk deal. Online at boardwalkhonda.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. We see a lot of text messages coming in, a lot of video stuff coming in. If you're on the free mobile app listening, you can message us through the phone, and we do have some app messages as well. So we'll read off those coming up on the other side. I want to open up the phones and the text board for you. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. You text, I'll respond. Coming up next, 609-403-0973. I also have messages through the free mobile app I'm going to get to, and I'll open up the phones between now and the end of the hour. Wide open in South Jersey, 609-573-3776. 3776. 609-573-3776. South Jersey, Delaware, 609-573-ESPN. 609-573-ESPN. 8 Jersey counties and all over the Delaware Valley at 609-573-3776. The phone line's wide open for you. The text board wide open for you. The free mobile app wide open for you. The next 40 minutes, all you and me hanging out here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. That was Merrill Reese here on the Eagles Radio Network, as you heard it right here on 97.3 ESPN. Block punt, TJ Edwards, Eagles recover, and then Jalen Hurts runs it in for a touchdown as the Eagles come back to beat the Carolina Panthers 21-18 on Sunday. We're unpacking it all here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's the text board in South Jersey, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776, and in Delaware, 609-573-ESPN. You know, there's a lot of things here that I know that people want to be negative about, but I think there is some things that we can look at on the positive side. You know, you have to win bare knuckle fight games in the NFL. You have to be able to win that type of game. It's how you grow up and to become a good football team. I'm not suggesting that the Eagles are a good team right now, but that's how good teams become good teams. They find ways to get into scraps on the road and win games. You have to be able to get into a fist fight on the road and come out of that fight with a win. You know, a lot of times you'll take a look back and say, man, you fought hard, but you're just not finding ways to win. You know who that was? That was the Los Angeles Chargers for a while. They kept, they were the team that was known for playing these close games and just not finding a way to win that game, not finding a way to finish that game out. Well, the Eagles are down in this game, and they didn't find a way to finish the game out. They found a way to get back into the game, keep it where it was, and then overtake the Carolina Panthers yesterday and win that game. So I think you take a look at what Jonathan Gannon did with his defense yesterday. His defense won them the football game on the road. That cannot be ignored. We have to highlight that. We have to be able to highlight that John Gannon's defense won a football game for the team after being criticized pretty heavily the last 2 weeks after giving up 83 points. That's number one. Number two, I think Jalen Hurts showed a lot of toughness late in that game to be able to overcome, which I thought was a poor game plan, but just a mediocre effort by Hurts. And I'm not saying effort in terms of what he put into the game. I'm talking about just his play. He just did not play, in my opinion, all that well. His decision-making wasn't concise. It wasn't as quick as it has been. He missed guys. I think he had some bad throws. But in the end, his team got him a blocked punt. And in the end, that blocked punt, he took advantage of. He took advantage with that throw that he makes to Goddard. On 1st and 10, they get a 9-yard run from Miles Sanders, and they get a 1-yard run, So you're like, we're now down in distance, 2nd and 9. And he throws that pass to Goddard, and I thought that was just a momentum-changing kind of pass right there. It was that pass and the one to Watkins that he kind of made two big throws after not playing well through most of the game. Now, look, am I sitting here telling you that Jalen Hurts is an all-pro Super Bowl franchise-winning quarterback? Absolutely not. But late in that game, his defense kept him in the game, gave him a chance to win it, and he took advantage of it. That's growth right there. And then, of course, the block punt from TJ Edwards. That is a huge play in the game. I mean, it's just a huge play of the game, but keep in mind, there were other things that happened before that. It was a 3rd down and 2, right, on the drive before. It's 3rd and 2 at the Eagles' 30-yard line, and the Eagles, Jannard Avery and Josh Sweat make a play. They tackle Royce Freeman for a yard loss, and they force Carolina to have to kick a field goal there. Because if they get the 1st down, who knows? That drive stays alive. Maybe they get a touchdown. but the defense comes up with a third down stop. That is something that has not been talked about all that much. That third down stop really could have been a big difference maker in the game. Jannard Avery, a guy that doesn't get a lot of playing time, comes in and makes a big play there. And then Steve Nelson, late in the game, Carolina, okay, that's their last-ditch effort. They go down in the game, but they got plenty of time left. And the third down and 15, oh, my gosh. Jim Schwartz, here you come. Welcome back. Darnold connects with Robbie Anderson for 25 yards on 3rd and 15, and you're thinking, here we go. But Steve Nelson steps in there, and he makes, really the game-saving interception, and it's a play that they absolutely needed. Now, late in that game, what the heck is Miles Sanders doing? He runs out of bounds twice. They finally sat him for that. And I'm telling you, I think Gainwell was trying to run out of bounds too, but he got tackled before. But this is the play right here that really seals the deal for the Eagles. Merrill Reese right here on the Eagles Radio Network. Nelson, Slay had the 2 interceptions. I like what Scott Grayson said. Those 2 guys are veterans. Did they get a chance to sit down with Jonathan Gannon and tell him, hey, this is what we like to do. This kind of works better for our skill sets? Because you saw what Slay said after the game, that he followed Moore around. So it wasn't him sitting in zones. He got the chance to play the way that he wants to play. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Joey D. in Ventnor City on the text board says, Mike, gritty win. I don't like that Jalen Hurts is the team's leading rusher. Time to get more push up front for some runs, which will open up the pass game much, much more. Well, we all want to see the ball run a lot more. They're just not doing it right now. Don't know why. Miles Sanders had 11 carries for 45 yards. That's 4 yards a pop. You know what 4 yards a pop gets you? A first down for the most part. If you take 4 carries and run it 3 straight times, that's a first down. Nick Sirianni is doing a disservice to his young quarterback and a disservice to his offense if he does not implement more of the run game. This team, right, the profile of the players on the Philadelphia Eagles, if you were to walk in there and say, what should this team be? Who should they be? The Philadelphia Eagles. What should this team be with the personnel that they have? You would look around and you would say, this team should be a team that runs the football. This should be a team that utilizes their offensive line, which is pretty good, right? It's a good offensive line. We'll get into the offensive line in just a little bit. It is a team that has 2 good tight ends that can get open and can be chain movers. And when you have 2 tight ends and an offensive line that can run the ball, you can then be what you want to be, which is a downfield offense because you have speed at wide receiver. The problem is you are trying to be a downfield with the big play too much. Your team is not ready to be there. They're just simply not ready to be the team. So I have advice for Nick Sirianni, and it's free advice. You should try running the ball. It will help your wide receivers and the screen game that you seem to want to run. Also, the middle of the field will be wide open. Utilize the 2 tight ends that you have. He has 2. We talk about this way too much. He has 2 very good tight ends. They are not a part of it. Yesterday, the tight end, Dallas Goedert, 2 catches for 28 yards. Guess what? The one for 20 yards set up your touchdown. Zach Ertz had 1 for 7, although Ertz had a drop that he should have had. It was a bad throw, but you got to catch the ball. Goddard had a drop in the he would have scored a touchdown. I thought Hurts fired that ball a little bit too close to his face. Threw it a little too hard. Not enough touch on that thing. Goddard was wide open. But those are your two weapons. Utilize Goddard and Ertz, the run game. I think you got to start phasing Sanders out more and utilizing Gainwell more in the running attack. This offense that they're running is not conducive to Miles Sanders. It's more conducive to Kenneth Gainwell. Yesterday, Gainwell had 8 yards a carry. Now, he only had two for 16. But I think that Gainwell, you got to figure out who you want to be in the running game. You got to figure out if you want to just have a short passing game, be the run game. If that's the case, Gainwell's your guy. Nick Sirianni, right now, is the play caller. He's got to get it together. You know why? Because his defense kept him in the game, and his defense has a chance, right? His defense has a chance the next couple of weeks to keep this team in the game, to keep this season relevant. And you know what? It's not about winning a Super Bowl this year. It's about setting a culture, a winning culture, and figuring out who wants to be a part of the winning culture. Jonathan Gannon got his act together yesterday. Guess what? The head coach let Jonathan Gannon have it. Well, maybe it's time to look in the mirror and have a good conversation with yourself, Nick Sirianni, because your offense right now is holding this team back. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Mike, Darnold is really bad. My take from the game is the Panthers' local radio must be blasting their team today. That's a bad loss for them. If that's a team that thought they were taking the next step to being, a non-playoff team to maybe a low-level playoff team, like a wild card team, can't lose that game at home. Mike, they need Boston Scott's speed at running back. They got plenty of speed at running back with Sanders and Gainwell. It's not that Boston Scott, is not as fast as those guys, if not faster. The difference is I think they are in a position where Gainwell is the guy he wants to go with, but they still have Sanders there. He's trying to kind of tiptoe around that situation. You're right. I said this last week. I would explore trading Sanders, and then I'd utilize Gainwell as my back, Scott as my third down kind of change of pacer, and then I have Jordan Howard that can kind of take the Sanders role or be a third running back on this team. I'm trying to trade Sanders if I'm Howie Roseman right now. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Sports Bash this hour is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union. Choose better banking for great rates on loans, refinancing, and credit cards, free or low-cost financial products, and friendly personal service. Visit jerseyshorefcu.org for more information. When we come back, I want to get into your thoughts on where this team is going. Was that just a game of that was a game yesterday where you won the game and you don't even know how to react to it. Most people just want to be negative, right? Most people just want to be negative. But they won the game, and it's a good thing, right? Your chance to react here on the Sports Bash, 609-403-0973 on the text board, 609-403-0973. Couple more texts coming in. We'll read off those on the other side. If you're watching the show live on our YouTube channel, keep the comments coming. I will react to them as well. And we'll open up the phone lines from now to the end of the hour, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776, South Jersey, Delaware, 609-573 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. Welcome back. Sports Bash on a Monday, brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Online, eastcoastroofing.com. I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Hopefully you're enjoying a Victory Monday feel, right? I think most people don't know how to react to the Eagles win. Most people are like, that game was so ugly. I feel like a lot of people just don't have a lot of expectations for this team. They don't know how to think. I think of it like this. That, to me, was a stepping stone kind of game. And I look at the schedule moving forward, and I say, there's not a team on this schedule other than Tampa, the Chargers, and Dallas that you're like, we can't, Carolina's a good team coming in. I don't say a great team, a playoff team maybe. They're 3-2. They fought with Dallas. They went back and forth in the Dallas game. Scored almost 30 points against Dallas without Christian McCaffrey in that game. So don't just act like their offense is awful. They had a big-time output against Dallas. They scored 28 points in the game against Dallas. Yesterday at home, they were only able to muster up 18. So there's something there. What is it? Well, we got to find out. 609-403-0973. Hurts cannot throw guys open, which is what you need from your quarterback to win ball games. He has not thrown a propensity to that. Here's the problem with that comment. I don't think the coach is allowing him to do it. I don't think their offense is really predicated on that. A lot of just bubble screens, wide receiver screen. They're not really, when he threw the ball to Quez Watkins, it wasn't the best throw in the world. It didn't have him, but it was there. I agree with you. The arm strength of Jalen Hurts is, look, this isn't like Jalen Hurts is a franchise quarterback. I think we all can see that he's not. I think we all can see that Jalen Hurts isn't a franchise star. But can you win with him is the question. Is his intangibles winnable? That's the question. Bill in EHT says, Mike, the offensive play calling is very predictable. When I watch other teams, they put wide receivers and tight ends all over. Sometimes the receivers look like they're lost when they finish their route. Yeah, I can't argue a lot with that. I think the Eagles' offense, very vanilla. I think their Eagles' offense right now is very predictable. I think the Eagles' offense right now is the talent is being underutilized. More text messages coming in. Mike, I kind of understand how you feel about Sanders, but I also believe that he is still a great back and a great asset, and I would be afraid of the Philly jinx in which we get rid of him, and he will be a world beater on some other team. I would feel safer in making one or two adjustments and finding a way for him to be what we need him to be. What do you think? Well, I think that sounds great in theory, but he has had 3 years now to really give a coach an opportunity to utilize his strengths, and they're not doing it. Doug Peterson didn't use Miles Sanders. Now Nick Sirianni's not using Miles Sanders. You saw Sanders yesterday. He ran out of bounds twice. He ran out of bounds twice with a lead late in the game. I don't think the coaches trust him. Right? Is that fair to say? The guy runs out of bounds twice. What does that tell you? The coaching staff doesn't trust him. I think they think he's a fumbler, and I don't think they think he knows the game very well. 609-403-0973. Keep the text messages coming in. Mike, I'm confused with what this Eagles team is. Well, I think we're all confused with what this Eagles team is. We shouldn't be confused, though. I told you Friday. They played defensively 2 good games against 2 mediocre teams. 2 good teams, their defense is not ready to compete with those weapons. You played a mediocre team yesterday. Your defense was in the game. You have a defense that can keep you competitive against teams that are good, not great. Dallas is a great team. Kansas City is going to be a team in the end that's going to be there. And if they're not, it's not because of their offense. It's because of their defense. The weapons that they have, the Eagles defense can't compete right now with them. But I said this all last week. If you play Atlanta, San Francisco, Carolina, that level of team, this defense is fine. You play Kansas City, you're going to have problems. 609 403 0973. 609 403 0973. I'll open up the phones as well. 609 573 3776 in Atlantic County, Cape May County, and in Delaware, 609 573 3776. Jay in Atlantic City, you're on 97.3. What's going on, Jay?
Mike, what's up, dude?
Everything's good.
I got a headache today from all his family and friends about this offense, especially Jalen Hurts. All I hear is negative things about Jalen Hurts. Listen, this guy can bowl. He's got the right temperament. He's got the athletic ability, but this offensive play calling is not conducive. Like you said, I couldn't agree more with what you said about the offensive play calling.
I want to like Sirianni, but he's not giving me a lot right now to work with. Jay, you there? Go ahead, man. He had a bad connection, it sounded like. All right, he kind of jumped off. If he jumps back in, we'll put him back through. 609 573 3776. I mean, I felt like he was about to make a good point. My interjection there would be that I want to like Sirianni, but I got to be real. So far, he's been a problem. I've given him an F multiple times. And if you asked me yesterday, I'd give him an F again for his offensive playing card. All right, we got Jay back. Go ahead, Jay. We lost you.
Hey, sorry about that. So listen, this guy, Jalen Hurts, is young. He's still young. He had a COVID-riddled rookie season. He's got a new head coach. He doesn't throw a great deep ball. I'll admit that. But this guy can play. Establish the run game, establish the read option game, and then your screens and your downfield will open up. You'll have holes in the zone. Oh, right now, these kids are just dropping 7 deep and making your quarterback make perfect passes, which he can't do right now. Mm-hmm. This offense is not ready for this downfield game. I couldn't agree more with what you said about the play calling.
Yeah.
And not to mention just opening up the passing game, but how about controlling the clock?
That's a big
how about
thing.
Keeping the defense off the field.
The tight ends for this team.
Three and out.
They elected to keep Ertz. Their two best offensive weapons and reliable are tight ends. They are chain movers. Let this team's offense become a chain-moving team, and then you have big play guys, but then utilize those guys as a surprise, not trying to hit it they're trying to hit the big play every time they have the ball.
Exactly. And as a defense, these guys are professionals. These defensive coordinators are probably licking their chops when they see the Eagles coming up on their schedule because they don't got to worry about the run. They can just drop them deep in coverage and make your quarterback be a superhero. And he's not ready for it right now.
And Jay, you know what? And I appreciate the call, man. The point you make that the middle of the field is open. They have the ability to be a chain-moving offense. And I know that doesn't sound fun, and I know that doesn't sound exciting, but you can throw the ball and be a chain-moving team, and then that sets up your opportunity to get the ball down the field. I'm going to tell you, if you go back and watch that game, if you go back and watch yesterday's game, I promise you, you will tell me tomorrow, Mike, I went back and watched that game, and you're right. They got guys running down the field open. Down the seam, open. You saw it just a handful of times yesterday. They showed the one with Quez Watkins. He's wide open, and Hurts has got his hands on his head because he says, oh, I missed this guy. If you go back and watch the game tape of that game yesterday, that is happening more than just 1 and 2 times. They have guys open. 609-403-0973. Mike, I think our predictable offense is our problem. I would put that at the top of the list. We agree there. And this is coming off of the game in Atlanta that I thought he did a really good job. More text messages. We got a lot of texts coming in. I'm going to try to keep as many as I can. I want to move fast through these texts while I'm getting them at a pretty rapid pace here. Mike Taylor played good at linebacker. Yeah, Davion Taylor did play good at linebacker yesterday. I brought that up earlier. Taylor had yesterday that play out in the flat, which was underrated. He made that tackle, open field, 5 tackles yesterday. His speed is a weapon at the linebacker spot. And he stopped the run, though. Mike in Ocean City says, hey, Mike. It's a nice stare down there. Mike? Hey, Mike. He says Sanders is a liability and provides minimal upside. He can hit the long run, but that takes 3 fumbles and 5 drops beforehand. Tired of people anointing him because he was the backup to Barkley. He was and is a backup running back in the NFL. All right. I will say this. I think he's talented, but I don't think they trust him. 3 fumbles and 5 drops. I think you're exaggerating a little bit there, but I get what you're saying. That's part of they don't trust him. So we're on the same page there, Mike, in Ocean City. I think the fumbles of the past have been an issue. The drops that he has shown in the offensive game, the team doesn't want to throw him the ball. They don't want to make him a part of their offense because they don't trust him. Now, I will say this. He's a better blocker than Gainwell. Dan checks in. And he says, you hit the nail on the head, Mike. The coaches do not trust Hurts. I think his abilities are limited to a certain degree, and they're only giving him what they feel he can handle, which turns out to be very vanilla style offense. Hurts was totally lost in the Dallas game. He looked like a deer in the headlights for most of that game. That's from Dan. Well, keep in mind, I think Hurts has a long way to go with becoming an NFL quarterback to the highest level. Go back to Josh Allen's first year. Josh Allen's going to be the MVP of the league, my opinion, right? Josh Allen's going to be the MVP of the league, my opinion. If you watch him last night on Sunday Night Football against Pat Mahomes, who was the better quarterback in that game? I got news for you. It wasn't close. Josh Allen is the MVP of the league. But I got news for you. Go back to Josh Allen's first 2 seasons in this league. He wasn't ready. Josh Allen as a rookie, 12 interceptions, 10 touchdowns. Now, I know what the first difference that everybody out there is going to bring up to me. Josh Allen has a howitzer. He can launch the ball. But the difference is he was not polished as an NFL passer. His completion percentage was 52%. That went up to 58. It was 69. This year it's down to 62. But 52% is where Josh Allen was. So why am I comparing Allen to Hurts? The arm strength is totally different. But where the similarities come in is Allen is a playmaker. He makes plays with his feet. He's a winner. And he's a guy who got better with more playing time. I think going to Wyoming, he needed more playing time. He needed a chance to kind of just see the speed of the game. And I think Jalen Hurts played in a style of offense in college that he needs just more NFL speed at him. But what I like about Hurts is, to me, he's a winner. Does that mean you're going to be an NFL winner week in and week out? I think that remains to be seen. But we need to give him more time, because if we gave up on Josh Allen after his first 2 years, you'd be giving up on the MVP of the league. Couple more text messages that are coming in I will get to in the next hour. It's football at 4 on the other side. But right now, I have the Eagles keyword of the day. If you want to go see the Eagles and Buccaneers in a club box Thursday night, club box seats, the keyword is SLAY, SLAY. Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com. The more entries, the more chances to win. The winning announcement tomorrow during Tuesday with Thompson. The word today is big play, SLAY.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Jeff Mosier.
I think our track record in the last 20 years, how many NFC East titles, playoff appearances, and appearances in the NFC Championship game. Those are some of the metrics I look at, and I'll compare our record with almost anybody.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which is out right now. You can check out, and you can check him out on the live video on our YouTube channel, and he joins me right now for a Monday edition of Football at 4. What's going on, Mosh?
What's up, Michael? How you doing?
And Eagles win, man. Does it feel like it today?
Not too much.
All right, let's start with that. Not too much, but a road win in the NFL in a game that you really did not play well. What does it say about where this team is or what this team might be?
You know, that's a great question about what might be. I'm not sure you derive a whole lot from the future other than I think you can take more about the moment, perseverance, coming up with some big plays on defense. Clearly that has sustainability if you can do what you do on what they did on defense. You know, blocking a punt, that's not something you can hang your hat on and say, next time we're in that kind of situation when it's neck and neck like that in the fourth quarter, we'll just block the punt. But those things do happen over the course of the year. And with what really gets lost is that if you're the Panthers today, we've talked every week about the Eagles and all the touchdowns they've negated by their stupid mistakes and things like that. If you're the Panthers today, you had a ball in the end zone and 4 guys trying to jump at it, and they start clawing at the ball instead, and it bounces out and it becomes a safety. I mean, that's how close they were to winning this game, and that's, again, something you can't hang your head on going forward. But I do like that they persevered. I do like that they figured some things out there in the fourth quarter. But when you try to project a win like that over the rest of the year, what you're really looking for is what did we do well that I think can continue for the rest of the year. 3 picks doesn't seem like something that's sustainable for this defense or a trend that you've seen before. And certainly a block punt is not sustainable as well.
No, all right. So you're right about the block punt thing and having, those special things helping you get the win. But I want to talk about, John Gannon took a lot of shots to defense. They gave up 83 points in 2 games, to which I kind of said, look, against Atlanta and San Francisco, they didn't really have problems. They had some problems, but they played pretty well. Most teams aren't Dallas and Kansas City weaponry. Most teams are Carolina, Atlanta, San Francisco. You've got the Raiders, Detroit, Denver. That's who most teams are. So is the defense equipped to win games for them?
Well, that's what we kind of talked about on the Inside the Birds podcast, and I wrote about it on InsideTheBirds.com. It feels like this team is going to have a chance to win when it plays a team that doesn't really have a very good offensive line or maybe kind of an erratic quarterback. But when they play a team that's clearly more established than them, they're really going to struggle. And you're fair to point out that the rest of the schedule after Tampa is going to be a bunch of games where you look forward and you look at it and say, some of these games are kind of that coin flip variety where if the Eagles play well, they can win. And certainly that's the case. And I think it sets up for this team to be in that 7 to 8 win range that I thought that they were going to be in. I've said from the start, Mike, that they were not going, it was going to be an ugly first 6 games because of the schedule. It's a really tough schedule. And honestly, I still think it's pretty difficult because instead of some real give-me's, we're talking about those games coming up after Tampa as coin flip games. Denver's good. They can win. They win at home a lot, and that's a road game for the Eagles. Vegas is a Jekyll and Hyde team, but they played better at home. That's a road team for the Eagles. The Lions are one of those teams that just, it's the whole, you don't want to play them because they tend to play pretty hard. Now, that's still a game that you think the Eagles have a good chance to win. New Orleans is a Jekyll and Hyde team. None of those teams feel like Eagles should be, Eagles should be the favorite in that game, maybe other than the Lions. So that's a great barometer for this team. When you play all those opponents back to back to back there, Do they win more than they lose? Do they show up? Even when they lose, do they at least represent themselves well? We'll see.
Well, if their defense plays the way it did yesterday, they should be competitive in those games. And then it comes down to where I think that they need to have – look, I talked about last week. I must have said it multiple times. They scored 30 points twice already this year. They didn't score 30 points at all last year. So there has been some growth in this offense. But where's the growth coming from? Because Sirianni has been – quite frankly, I want to like Sirianni. But I thought his game plan yesterday was awful again. I don't know that Hurts has been a Pro Bowler, but where have they seen that growth to where the offense has scored 30 points a couple times? And how does Sirianni kind of grow into a better play caller? I mean, he has got to be able to help his personnel out more.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm in total agreement with you that this offense lacks a flow, lacks a rhythm, lacks an identity. And I can't believe after Andy Reid and after Doug Peterson, we're actually talking about a head coach who runs the ball considerably less than both those guys. That is probably the most mind-boggling thing for me. If you notice, one of the plays that works well for the Eagles is the occasional read option, not RPO, just straight read option, where Jalen Hurts kind of fakes the handoff, watches the edge defender crash toward the middle, and then he takes off for a run. Well, almost every single one of those successful read option plays is set up by an actual run before it, because you have to actually make the opponent think you're going to run a little bit. So I keep thinking, if you just even if you want to do more of that college-y stuff or new wave stuff, just running the ball in general with your good offensive line will help you set that up. And then you can do some more read option with Jalen Hurts. And then after you burn a defense like that, then the defense has to adjust, and maybe you start seeing more openings in the passing game, because right now their passing game is very sporadic as well. It feels like you go to Devontae Smith because he knows how to get open, but everybody else, you kind of have to hope they get open, or there's a blown coverage, or you have enough time for Quez Watkins to completely lose somebody on a double move. That happens like once a game. That's not a consistent offensive recipe. If you remember Doug Peterson's first year, it did help that he started off 3-0, so he kind of bought some currency there, and Carson Wentz was playing well. But they only won 7 games that year. But the one defining thing about that year to me was that they led the NFL in time of possession, and that it seemed in every game, whether or not they executed wasn't the issue. They had a plan, and they had a good functional offense, and just sometimes Carson was a rookie, would throw a pick, or things would happen. You play a team that's better than you, but you understood the offensive game plan, and you liked the way Doug back then was counteracting what defenses do. I honestly can't tell you right now what Nick Sirianni's identity is as an offensive play caller.
I agree with that. I don't know what its identity is, but I would say this. If I'm allowed to give free advice to Nick Sirianni and I walk into a room and I say my personnel, Nick, your best personnel is you got you elected to keep Zach Ertz. Him and Goddard are your two best weapons. You got this kid Gainwell and Sanders. Work from the inside out. Like, you keep trying to hit the home run with the least experienced players you have. Utilize your experience, and then you can rely on your home run hitters, but you don't have to rely on them so much, and you might be more apt to get more from them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't give people advice, but based on just studying the league and how teams go, when you're a new team and you're a new coach and a first-time play caller trying to establish an identity, you tend to want to put the ball in the hands of the guys that you think can come through for you because they're your proven weapons. To me, there's 3 guys that fit that bill. 1, Miles Sanders, who I think is being criminally underused. 2, as you just mentioned, Dallas Goedert, who, listen, I like Zach Ertz. I'm not an anti-Zach Ertz guy, but I have said from the beginning that his presence on this team sort of feels like Alshon Jeffrey's presence on the team last year. Like, yes, he's good. He's probably better theoretically than what you have, but he's also stunting the development of some of your other younger players. And I think Dallas Goedert, having only 50% of the tight end targets or reps, even snaps, takes away from that. You need like kind of big physical presence to catch the ball, turn upfield, and run. And Dallas is good at that. And to only see 2 to 3 targets a game over the last 2 weeks, to me, is criminal underuse. And I still think that they don't use Jalen Reagor enough in the short game as an end around guy, as a Deebo Samuel-like quick strike weapon. Because when the ball's in his hands, he does tend, whether it's on kickoff or on the reverse that he had last week or on the screen, he tends to do well there. I just feel like they have to figure him out also.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack on this offensive side of the ball because, realistically, let me ask you this. Are you seeing guys down the seam that Hurts is missing? I mean, they showed it on the broadcast a handful of times yesterday. You saw Hurts have his hand on his head like, oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. That was with Devonta Smith. He had another one with Watkins. But is that happening more than the television broadcast is showing us that you're aware of?
Yeah, we do our tape review podcast that come out every Wednesday. And I know last Wednesday from the Kansas City game, Adam and I, we had both talked to different sources, league sources who watched the tape and grade the tape. And they felt like there were plays left out on the field. Not all the time, but enough that it's concerning. And one of the things that Jalen does, Mike, is
explain why that happens. What is he missing?
I was just about to go into there.
Right,
like
exactly.
Sometimes these routes have to develop, right? You're not just going to be open right off the bat. There's double moves, there's high-low patterns against certain formations. And one of the things that you're seeing Jalen do a little bit too much, and the coaching staff has even talked about it, is not just that he leaves the pocket early, but when he leaves the pocket, he's got to keep his eyes down the field. That's what the best running or dual threat quarterbacks do. They can run, navigate the pressure, but still keep their eyes down the field to make plays. In fact, I thought Jalen did a good job of that last year. If you remember that first touchdown he threw to Greg Ward, I guess Packers, I want to say, was kind of a deep over. He just kept going right, and then finally was able to locate Ward and throw the touchdown. And he doesn't seem to have that innate ability this year. And it seems like when he's out of the pocket, he's just trying to get out of there and either throw the ball out of bounds or run. By the way, when you get a guy to jump off sides, throw the ball in the field of play. You got a free play, throw the damn ball in the field of play. It doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah, no question. The offense seems very dependent on the wide receivers screens, and I'm looking at it like, fine, if that's what you think, but they don't have good blocking wide receivers like Jalen Reagor and Quez Watkins. They're the guys out there blocking for the screens. I mean, that doesn't sound like a recipe for a big play to me.
No, it doesn't. And it didn't help that it definitely felt like the Carolina Panthers, as every team, they watch the tape, they know what to expect. It felt like they expected a lot of those screens. And when that happens, you need to go to your plan B or C. I think they have okay personnel. I mean, they've certainly got a good enough offensive line to be able to run those type of delayed screens where, you kind of let the line come and your running back leaks out and he's got two linemen and a receiver or a tight end ahead of him. They can do that, but did not have success with that in Carolina. And to your point about everything does seem very schemed, right? And so there's two schools of thought of that. If Nick Sirianni feels like the only way for him to get Jalen Hurts successful is to scheme up everything and short stuff and gimmick. I don't want to say gimmicky stuff or college, just new wave offense. Is that Nick Sirianni's way of saying he doesn't trust Jalen Hurts to just be, conventional drop back quarterback who's going to run an offense and be able to run and escape pressure at his own, mindset? Or is that the offense Nick Sirianni is just always going to run no matter what quarterback he has? That I don't know what to make of it, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if I'm interpreting right now, I'm thinking he probably feels like he has to run that kind of offense for Jalen Hurts. But if this is an evaluation year, don't you have to run the offense you want to run and see if your quarterback fits it?
Yeah.
Because then you're either on a new quarterback or you're adjusting your offense. So
he's trying to serve two masters.
Yes. He's caught between two worlds here, I think.
And, I thought he called a terrific game against Atlanta. So it's in there. Like, I thought he did a great job of accentuating the positives of the personnel he had.
Mm-hmm.
Did a much better job of getting the ball to people in space, getting them the ball and letting them make plays. The last 3 or 4 weeks, not so much.
Well, how often the one big advantage he had in that Atlanta game is that nobody knew who Nick Sirianni was. Nobody knew what his scheme is. Nobody knew about how he was going to match that scheme to his personnel. He was very vanilla, as we talked about in the preseason. He barely played any of his starters. So while it was a good game plan, you also know that Atlanta's defense is not all that good. They don't have a whole lot of pass rushers. And that was his kind of, first putting of film out on tape. And again, some of the things Carolina did defensively were clearly intended to take away some of the short stuff that the Eagles have been thriving on.
Yeah. Jeff Mosher, football at 4. Obviously, you mentioned, the tight ends, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, and you said, is there a reason? Are they not schemed into the playbook? I mean, is this just something that Sirianni doesn't? Are they not getting a lot of snaps? Are they not in the offense?
No, they're there. I mean, they're in the offense. It's just that, when you're running a lot of screens, those balls tend to go to the wide receivers or the running backs. When you're, going deep down the field, those will be your wide receivers. I just don't feel like there's been much of an, and again,
well, I mean,
it's not like there are not intermediary routes. There are intermediary routes.
Well, I bring it up in that fashion. The first play in the game against Dallas, Goddard catches for 38 yards. Boom. In the game's biggest moment yesterday, 20-yard pass on 2nd and 9. Who's there? Goddard. I mean, Those are your dependable guys, and they're working. I just don't understand why they're getting away. So I'm wondering, are they not out? They're not getting the snaps. I haven't seen the snap counts. Are they not out on the field as much? Are they not getting? Are they not a part of the game plan or the scheme as much that maybe I'm missing? Because
they're out there, and the only thing that you notice is that they pretty much play the same number of snaps. So sometimes it's because they're on the field at the same time. Sometimes it's one for the other. But when Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz are on the field at the same time, which one's the inline blocker. It's Dallas Goedert because Zach Ertz is not a very good blocker. So that prohibits him in pass routes on those specific formations or personnel groupings, I should say. And then when he is out there as the lone tight end, there's Devontae also out there. There's Jalen Reagor out there. There's Quez out there. I do think that, you saw last week against Kansas City. I think I charted it. I'm not sure if I shared this with you, but his first 12 completions, 11 of them for Jalen Hurts were to the first read, where you can just watch a tape and tell that it was schemed. Yet you go to this guy on that play because the first quarter was all of a schemed up offense. If they can do that for certain other players, they can probably do it for Dallas Goedert as well, and they probably need to.
1,000%. You mentioned Sanders. Is this offense a better fit for Gainwell?
That's a great question.
You put your coffee down pretty quick on that one.
Yeah, well, you threw it at me. I don't know because I don't know what this
extrapolate a little longer so you can take a sip.
No, it's all right. It only stays hot for so long, Mike.
I know.
What was I trying to say? So I don't. In order to answer your question, is this offense more conducive to Kenneth Gainwell than Miles Sanders? I would have to ask you what the offense is.
Right, but I somebody mentioned yesterday. I don't know if I saw it in a response to something on our, but whatever it was, that Gainwell is more in the style of McCaffrey, Kamara, that newer style of running back that they're not big, but they catch the ball. They're elusive in the backfield, So is Gainwell more usable in this offense? And I would ask you this. Did they just simply not trust Sanders? I mean, obviously, he had to get taken off the field because he went out of bounds twice. Is that something that is perpetual that they keep seeing in practice that makes them not trust him?
I had a source tell me that last week that we need to go back to training camp and remember how good he was. Because Miles Sanders had a great training camp, and it was described to me as a Pro Bowl level training camp. So I imagine that the only thing we know of that Miles didn't do.
Oh, it's a bad time for Jeff Mosher to kind of go out on us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. There he goes. All right. The only thing that Miles Sanders did not do was
catch the ball well at training camp, but that has not been an issue throughout the season. Lord knows he's caught about 30 screens and throughout 5 weeks here. I mean, he's caught the ball fairly well. So up until not running out of bounds twice against Panthers, I thought he was having, from an assignment standpoint, a pretty good year. You're asking if Kenneth Gainwell fits the offense, but they're not used similarly. Gainwell is used more as a receiver, but not just as a receiving running back. He lines up at wide receiver, and especially in the 2-minute and 4-minute drill, when they want to move fast and get pass mismatches, they do put Kenneth Gainwell in there. But, to me, your answer is, well, he fits.
All right, Moshe, you're freezing up on us. We're talking about Gainwell.
This offense.
All right, you froze up on us a little bit there. He's freezing up on us. We're coming to the end here with Jeff Mosher because I do want to ask him if we can get him back in to the stream. There he is. All right, I want to move on real quick because we got a couple of minutes left. You were talking about. I want to talk about what Slay insinuated yesterday. Slay 2 picks, Nelson a pick. Were they used differently, or does Darnold stink?
Yes.
Now,
I think they were.
if you're watching the video, you got a full encapsulation of him taking that question in.
Yeah. Yes.
We got to get him back on here because I want to hear the response to Slay.
What's going on today, Mike?
I don't know, man. You got bad internet connection. Yeah, you got bad internet connection. That's what's going on.
This hasn't happened in like 3 months. I don't know why all of a sudden. But anyway,
and you were rolling good for 17 minutes.
That's how you know something's bad's gonna happen. So
give me
there was more man coverage.
Right.
And
yes, Slay insinuated that he moved with DJ Moore.
Yes. And by the way, they played more man than their season average last week against Kansas City because you saw Slay trailing Travis Kelce a little bit. They're still mostly zone, and they were still mostly zone, I believe, against the Panthers. But there were situations where when they did play man, they played sides, or they played trail, meaning that Darius was going to be on the DJ Moore, and Nelson would probably be on Robbie Anderson. So it worked out for them, but that's also because they generated a lot of pressure. And, for all the flack we give Jalen Hurts for leaving the pocket early, Sam Darnold gets like the tiniest amount of pressure on him. And you start to see those feet churning and that almost like deer in the headlights look from him.
Hey, Friday I said, look, this guy is what he is. He's a turnover guy, and it's not just it's interceptions. He fumbles a lot. You got to get after him. The Eagles did a great job there. Did you hear what Dungy said last night at halftime?
I did not.
So he says Bills are playing the perfect scheme for Kansas City. Tampa 2, safeties way off the line, make them keeping everything in front, and Kansas City has no place to go. The Eagles ran that. That Gannon is not an idiot. He knows what he's doing. He just doesn't have the horses.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course you play 2 deep safeties against Kansas City because they have weapons. And the idea of playing 2 deep safeties is a lot of teams do that. But when you build your team around that, example, the Colts are a big cover 2 team. They also have Darius Leonard at linebacker, and they have a 320-pound defensive tackle who kind of takes on those double teams. So you can play cover 2 or inverted Tampa 2, whatever you want to play. You just got to be able to stop the big runs. You got to keep Kansas City to modest second and third downs. The Eagles couldn't do that because they couldn't stop the running game.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So it's the right scheme. They have the wrong personnel.
Right scheme, wrong personnel. But even within cover 2, you can do things underneath that cover 2, Mike. You can play 2-man, which is 2 deep safeties, but man underneath. You can play man one side, zone on the other. You can be deceptive post-snap, meaning you have one safety in the box. By the way, you saw this yesterday. Anthony Harris would line up in the box and then run back to the top to really give a 2-deep look, even though it started off as a one deep look. I think that's what you have to do against good offenses. You have to be confusing and not just telegraph what you're doing. That was one of the issues with the scheme for the last 2 weeks against Dallas and Kansas City.
All right, the latest Inside the Birds podcast is out. They go a lot deeper on all the topics and more as the Eagles get to 2-3 by beating the Carolina Panthers. Their 2 wins have both come on the road this year, the Philadelphia Eagles. Jeff Mosher at Jeff Mosher NFL on Twitter. Check out at Inside Birds and the Inside the Birds podcast in the Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to your podcast. Moshe, we'll talk to you Wednesday, man.
All right, brother. Take care.
That'll be Eagles and Bucks on Wednesday. We'll turn the page to that. Speaking of the Eagles and the Bucks, coming up on Thursday's show, when the Eagles get ready for the Bucks, we'll talk to former Tampa Bay Buccaneer Anthony Becht will join me right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, Eagles fans out there right now, you can win Eagles Tampa Club Box tickets. Head to 97.3ESPN.com to enter right now, and I'm going to give you another chance to enter today at 4:55. Get the Eagles keyword of the day and enter it. It gives you a bonus entry to win Eagles Buccaneers Club Box tickets for this Thursday night's game at Lincoln Financial Field. Football at 4 is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. The Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today. Caesars.com. I got a lot of text messages I need to get to here. And if you're watching the show on the video stream, I will get to yours as well. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up at 4:40 today, Paul Hudrick. Is Ben Simmons ready to cave in? The latest details right now at 973ESPN.com and the free mobile app. 431 Sports Bash Monday. I'm Mike Gill. Paul Hudrick will join me to talk a little bit about this Ben Simmons latest. If you need to know, go to our website now, 973ESPN.com. Check out the free mobile app for the latest on Ben Simmons. Could he be caving? Could he be ready to return? We'll talk to Paul Hudrick, Sixers insider from Liberty Ballers, coming up at 4:40 today on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm going to react to some more of your reactions here. 609-403-0973. Mike, Eagles fans should be glad for the victory. Winning ugly games should not be looked down on as long as the team is always learning. Ask Detroit fans how it feels to be on the other side of close, ugly games. Well, I agree with the whole, I don't care if you win by 40, by 3, by 1, that doesn't matter. We see that all the time in the NFL. Team loses a bad game. The next week they come back. I always go back. The Eagles lost to the Dolphins. Everybody thought they were horrible. They came back and ran the table. It doesn't matter. It's a week-to-week league. We all know that. Just get the win. Some days you just don't play well. But the Eagles' perpetual ineptitude in the play calling is a problem to me. That is something that has been perpetual. Mike, the team needs to get more discipline. Too many penalties. Hurts needs to stay in the pocket or at least stop trying to extend every play. I get it. The line is banged up, but he's causing penalties, holding because of plays like these. They definitely got to get more discipline. I think I thought the offensive line, for the most part, for all the problems and injuries, I thought they gave him some time. You're right. He does get out of the pocket. I will say the one thing that he does very well, as opposed to what Wentz does, is he just throws the ball and lives to fight another down. Wentz would try to find somebody as he's on his way out of bounds and he throws an interception. That happens so many times the last couple of years. Hurts just goes out of bounds and he just throws it out of bounds and lives to fight another down. Let's see. How can people say coaches don't trust Hurts when he's throwing 30 to 35 plus passes a game? I can't understand that we won and people are still bashing or I guess bitching is what you're trying to say. As far as Hurts, yeah, he didn't have the best game, but he shook it off. Don't let him and didn't let it get to him and came out and helped with the game. All right. The first part here, how can people say coaches don't trust Hurts? He's throwing 35 plus times. It's not that he's throwing 35 times. It's the passes that he's throwing. These are just safe passes. Just 1, 2, 3, get it out. 1, 2, 3, get it out. 1, 2, 3, get it out. They're not asking him to, really do a whole heck of a lot. That's when they say they don't trust him. Mike, I think Jalen's height makes it hard for him to see the middle of the field. Every lineman is taller than Baker Mayfield, same problem. Yeah, I heard that about Drew Brees. Russell Wilson's not very tall either. It's a good excuse for people who don't know what they're talking about, like that guy right there. Darnold remind me of a worse Eli Manning. Don't judge Eagles defense a guy like that. Well, you got to judge them against a guy like that because that's who you're playing against most times. You're Sam Darnold. I mean, coming up, you've got Derek Carr, Goff, Bridgewater, Winston, Daniel Jones, Zach Wilson, Taylor Heineke. That's who you're playing. Sam Darnold is on the level of those guys. Mike, Bengals put up a fight yesterday. They did put up a fight yesterday. That was a good game. I was happy that the Packers covered. Let's just say that. Ben Simmons, is the stare down ready to end? Who's going to win? We got the latest details on our website, 973ESPN.com, and on the free mobile app. Who is ready to win the stare down? New details emerging today. Ben Simmons versus the Sixers next. 441 on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN this hour, brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. I actually had a good bet to PropSwap the other day. I just needed Penn State to have a pulse, and unfortunately, they couldn't come through. They blew it for me. We got new news on the Ben Simmons front today. Is this significant news? Paul Hudrick, I know, from LibertyBallers.com. Paul, I know a lot of people have been saying, hey, when new news about Ben Simmons comes out, please let us know, because it sounded like a lot of circulation of just stuff people had been thinking. But is today's news significant news?
I would say it's significant, but it's not surprising. Look, he's losing a lot of money, quite frankly. Me personally, I don't have that kind of money to be setting on fire like that. That's a lot of money he's losing for every game he misses, every practice he misses. That's going to add up. And we saw, Kyle Neubeck just reported, I think it was last week or a few days ago, that his camp was looking into recouping the money, which that's not a thing. You're not going to be able to recoup it. That's lost. And from the people I spoke to, it seems like this is what the Sixers thought was going to happen all along. They really expected him to report because that being the primary reason, because money, it's just too much money to miss out on. And then two, we can't lose sight of the fact that the Sixers still hold the cards. He's under contract for the next 4 years. Yeah. He can't force a trade right now. He can't do it. The Sixers have the leverage. So, like I said, it's substantial in that this maybe gets the ball rolling a little bit, whether that ultimate resolution is him being traded or the remote possibility that he plays a game again for the Sixers. This at least starts that. But like I said, I don't view it as surprising because from all the people I had talked to, this seemed like it was going to happen at some point or another.
All right. Woj reported today that Sixers officials and Rich Paul, Ben's agent, have progressed in talks over recent days on a resolution to bring Ben Simmons back to Philadelphia in the near future. Discussions are ongoing. The plan remains for the Sixers to continue canvassing the league for trades, but the possibility of Simmons reporting to the team has increased in recent days. So I guess the question here is, does Ben come back to play or does Ben come back to report?
That's the question, right? And everything from his camp signifies that he's coming back, but not to play. So I guess my question is, if you're coming back, but you have no intention on playing, I don't know how he expects to avoid being fined. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to expect because I don't know what he expects. Like, I don't know and I think this has kind of been the issue with the situation all along. The only end game I see for him, the only thing he's looking at is I want to get traded. There's kind of no real strategy on how to make that happen. And like the holding out thing, yeah, I mean that's I guess you could say you're proving a point, but what point are you proving now that you're coming back and you're reporting because you're losing money? So is this really going to accelerate the process of a trade? I don't think it does. I think when you look at like key dates around the league, December 15th is a big one. That's when guys who were traded that were signed this offseason can be traded. So that's a big day. And then after that, you look at the trade deadline because right now, Mike, is the worst time to make a trade. Everybody thinks they're good. The Chicago Bulls think they're good. The Portland Trail Blazers think they're good. Everybody thinks they're a good team. So no one's going to give you the offer you want. And the Sixers know that. So that's a big part of the reason why they're not in a hurry. And to just go back to it, they hold the cards. They have a player under contract. So whether that leads to him playing games, I personally don't foresee that. But, if he's planning to report and thinking that somehow him and Rich Paul are going to talk the Sixers into giving him money to stay away, I don't see that scenario working out for him.
Right. So in other words, there had been some murmurs that he would come back and then basically fake an injury. Oh, my ankle's swollen, my hamstring hurts, my back is tight, so that he doesn't continue to get fined, right? I mean, is that a scenario that seems likely? Hey, I come back, I'm not ready to play because, I hadn't been in training camp, so I'm not really ready. I'm not in shape.
It's possible. We've seen Rich Paul kind of use this tactic in the past with Anthony Davis with the Pelicans. But with that said, Anthony Davis is coming off a surgery. In this case, there's really nothing with Ben Simmons that would indicate, he was healthy all through the playoffs last year. For the most part, was pretty healthy during last season. He did have the back issue that he has dealt with in the past, but he's mostly been healthy. So it's hard. Like, if he's just going to show up and say he's hurt, that's going to create another issue, right? Because that's, the team's going to evaluate him and basically say, like, well, no, we think you're healthy enough to play. And then at that point, it's going to get escalated to the league office. And I don't know how the league office would handle it, but could he try that? Sure. But I think that's, if anything, that's just would be buying him more time. I don't think that's something that's going to be, that's like a temporary solution, because you can claim to be hurt and then you got to go through the steps and all that. So maybe that buys him time away from the team a little bit, buys him time to not play or practice, but that can only last for so long, because eventually that's going to wear, if he's not truly hurt, that's going to be a situation where that's going to go against him, I would think, at some point in the near future.
Let me ask you, I know it's hard to really encapsulate this, but how would he be received?
But, well, I think it depends on who you're asking me is the people receiving him.
I think I know how the fans would be received.
Yeah, exactly.
What about his teammates, though?
So that's what's funny, Mike, is I have gotten the sense all along that there's not a player in this locker room, and it's not like when they all went out there in media today and said, we want Ben back, or when we talked to Furkan Korkmaz today and said, yeah, I love playing with Ben, I want Ben back. I don't think there's a guy on this roster that if Ben Simmons showed up today and suited up and said, I want to play with you guys, there is nobody on this team that would say, no, you can't, like, that would have a problem, that would revolt. I don't think there's a guy on this team that would feel this way. All the younger guys love him. All the younger guys look up to him, truly. Whether it's Maxey, Thibault, Korkmaz, these guys look up to Ben Simmons. Joel Embiid, yeah, I mean, there might be some stuff they gotta hash out, but I think ultimately when Joel Embiid says, I want him here, I don't think that's just blowing smoke. I think Joel Embiid realizes, and he said this, they are a better team with Ben Simmons here. You look at Tobias Harris. Him and Tobias Harris are still close. They still have talked throughout this. Danny Green is a guy who's reached out to him. Seth Curry and him are like, you know what I mean, Mike? Like, there's not a guy on this team.
Maxey and him have the same agent.
And they're exactly, and they are very close. So they're like, there's not a guy on this team that I could say, like, yeah, I think if Ben Simmons shows up, this guy's going to have a problem with it. Up and down that roster, I think every player would understand, hey, it's a business. That's part of the deal. And they would welcome him back. I really, truly believe that.
Without Ben Simmons, Doc Rivers suggested that it's between Milton and Maxey, and they both offer different things. Milton, of course, is hurt. Now Maxey is hurt now, too. Neither one will play tonight. The fact that this is really, I think it's the last preseason game before the opener. They might have one more.
Second to last, yeah.
Second to last, right. So how do they move on without Ben Simmons? What's the answer? If no Ben Simmons, then what?
It's going to hurt defensively in a big way. I mean, you're taking one of, if not the best perimeter defender in the entire NBA off your roster. That's going to hurt, especially if you have to start, either Maxey or Milton. With all due respect to those guys, they're not Ben Simmons defensively. They're not, a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. They don't get, they don't have that status. Also, we can quibble over what Ben Simmons does and doesn't do, but the reality is too, as far as generating 3-pointers for teammates, it's him and LeBron James are the guys who lead the league consistently in that category. So if you don't have him, it's all well and good for Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris to be out there saying, hey, we need to take more threes. And I agree with that, but you need a guy who can get that gravity, get the crowd into the paint and then dish it off and find those threes. So it's going to be a little tougher for them to do that. Now, when you look at Maxey, you look at Milton, yeah, I mean, they bring totally different things. Like, as we sit here today, I don't think anyone would argue that Tyrese Maxey, from a potential standpoint and just as a basketball player, Tyrese Maxey is, to me, a better player than Shake Milton and has a brighter future than Shake Milton. But I think one of the interesting things that Doc noted is defensively, Shake Milton does have some length. He's shown more as far as, on ball defense than Maxey has. And, in preseason, it's early and all that. So there's that. Shooting wise, clearly Shake is much further ahead than Maxey is in that category. And then, as a pure point guard, maybe Milton is like slightly ahead, but the biggest issue with Shake is ball pressure. He's really struggled in his career when a team picks him up full court. You saw in that Toronto game, Scotty Barnes is hounding him up and down the floor, and he struggled with it. He got into a groove and, eventually found his way. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be those two guys. I think matchups are, Doc has said this, like he doesn't know if he's going to have a set starting lineup. Maybe it'll be matchup dependent for those guys. Maybe in certain cases, they'll start Matisse Thybulle if it's a tougher defensive matchup, a team like the Nets where you have to guard multiple elite perimeter scorers. Perhaps Matisse Thybulle gets a shake to start, and Seth Curry has to play point guard. Like that, Doc's going to have to be creative. And as Danny Green said the other night too, it's not going to be one guy who replaces Ben Simmons. It's going to be a bunch of different guys doing a bunch of different things, and it's going to take a team to make it happen.
Yeah, I know that, Doc is kind of, sifting through those two options, both which will not play tonight. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes across the decision on who he wants to start, who he wants to come off the bench, who fits best with what they got out there. Real quick, because the regular season opens up next Wednesday night against the Pelicans. Some of the new faces, Paul, how have they fit in, and how will that change the team?
Yeah, I mean, the Sixers had a pretty quiet free agency, but their two biggest signings, George Niang and Andre Drummond, they've been spectacular. I mean, for what their roles are, they've been spectacular. And you just look at what they're replacing. Mike Scott, no secret, he struggled last year. He was bad. Had a really tough season. Don't know if it's health. Don't know what it is, but I don't think he's currently on a team right now either. I mean, he really had a difficult time last year. Dwight Howard, who had his moments, but we all saw the flaws of Dwight, and some of those kind of overlap Andre Drummond's weaknesses as well. But I think when you look at those two guys as a backup 4 and 5, maybe not significant, but noticeable upgrades at those spots. George Niang can shoot the hell out of the ball. He's over 40% from his career, has a quick release. It's a beautiful stroke. It's real easy and just is real comfortable coming out of his hands. He's smart. He's a really good. I mean, we saw some of it right when he was at Iowa State. I mean, he was a star there. He's not that guy, but he knows where to go with the basketball. He knows how to run an offense. Defensively, he's not great, but he tries, and he's smart. He knows where he's supposed to be. He knows when to help. He knows what the assignments are. Like he makes up for the lack of athleticism with his intelligence and with his size. He's a pretty darn good player as a backup 4. And then Drummond, I don't think people realize how much better Andre Drummond is than Dwight Howard. There's a difference. The age is a big factor. He's almost a decade younger. As a passer, we've already seen that. We've seen Andre Drummond hit a bunch of guys on backdoor plays, finding guys out for corners, corner threes. Dwight Howard couldn't do that. And then the biggest thing for me, Mike, is when you look at fouls per 36 minutes. Andre Drummond has averaged almost 2 less fouls per 36 minutes in his career than Dwight Howard. Think about all those possessions last year that ended with illegal screens or, Dwight just barreling over somebody. You won't have that nearly as much with Drummond. So, I mean, as long as Andre Drummond and really Niang too, as long as they stay within themselves, play their roles, I think they're going to be, like I said, just very noticeable upgrades at the 4 and the 5 position.
All right, Paul Hudrick will be with us for the Sixers again this season. You can check out his work at Liberty Ballers, Paul Hudrick on Twitter, and, of course, the Sixers tonight against the Nets. It's an 8 o'clock start, and essentially no Sixer is in the lineup tonight. Who's going to bring the ball up tonight?
Embiid, right? We got
Are you bringing the ball up tonight?
Nah, I'll let you. Joel Embiid can just play point guard. It'll be fun.
He did in where did he play? He was bringing the ball up in the African game, the NBA African games, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, remember that Miami game last year when they were completely ravaged and he scored like 43 points and like no one.
Jeez.
It was him, Dakota Mathias. It would be great.
That's right. All right, we'll see you, Paul. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, that's good. Anytime, man.
Hey, if you want to win Eagles Buccaneers tickets for Thursday night, club box seats. The word is SLAY, SLAY. Go to our website, 973ESPN.com right now and enter the word SLAY, and you could be entered to win. All right, 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash Live ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Casey Joyner has one thought on every game. And don't forget, we have a chance for you to win Eagles-Bucks Club Box tickets. I got a pair for you for this Thursday's game. Go to our website, 973ESPN.com right now, and you can enter. 5 o'clock hour, Casey Joyner is brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. For a healthier life, call 609-463-CAPE as we go one thought on every game in Week 5. And what a Week 5 it was. It was a wild weekend in the NFL. The Eagles beat the Carolina Panthers, Casey. They come from behind. They didn't have the lead in that game till the final 2 minutes. So a lot of adjustments made. Let's start with Jonathan Gannon's defense. What was different, if anything, that we saw? Was it just simply Carolina's not very talented offensively? Why did the Eagles defense essentially keep them in and win them that game?
I think what it was is that Gannon realized, like, you look at what they did against Kansas City. And in Kansas City, they said, oh, my God, we're scared of this offense. We're going to sit back in this shell cover 2, and we're going to keep everything in front of us. And they basically did that, but they got beat with some big plays, and they couldn't stop anything in front of them. This game, they said, let's be aggressive. We don't think these guys can pass block very well, so let's get after their quarterback. We also don't think, and based on the metrics, they shouldn't have thought that Robbie Anderson could get open. Robbie Anderson coming into that game had the 9th lowest average separation distance on passes per NFL Next Gen stats in the first 4 weeks of the season. So he's been terrible at getting open. And they said, fine, we're going to stay on top of him. We're going to press these guys. And we know, as we talked about late last week, that Darnold will throw risky passes if you give him the opportunity to. And I think that's what the Eagles figured that he'd do. So kudos to them for that approach.
Yeah, I know that you saw the 2 interceptions from Slay. You got the big one from Nelson that kind of sealed the deal yesterday. Did they play those guys differently? Were they doing something different with Slay and Nelson that put them in position, or is that just 2 players making plays?
I think it's 2 players making. Well, one, it's a lot of press coverage for 1, and for 2, you could see Robbie Anderson. He's getting very frustrated this year. He's used to being a big play receiver, and I've done a couple of analyses for these in my articles for The Athletic that come out every Monday, and looked at Anderson's metrics, and he's not being utilized and not getting open on vertical passes especially. And it's really frustrating him because his history is of a guy who can make big plays and can be used in the vertical game. And I think the Eagles knew that they want to get Anderson involved in this offense, and we're going to do things to take more out of the vertical passing game, so they have to funnel things over to him. So I think they did. They set a trap essentially, and that last play, I think it's what they did. I haven't seen the coaches film it, but on the interception that clinched the game, I think that's what they did. Is said, we know you're going to throw to Anderson. We're going to sit back in a way to make it seem like he's open, and we're going to just go jump on this route because he's doing a terrible job of running routes. He's very tentative this year.
Now, last night and during the Sunday night broadcast, you heard Tony Dungy say Buffalo's playing the perfect defense, cover 2, safeties deep, and I'm thinking that's exactly what Jonathan Gannon did last week. Why does it work for Buffalo, not Philadelphia against Kansas City?
Well, I mean, people, and it's funny they talk about the using cover 2 against Kansas City because teams have been doing that all year for the last 3 years. That's why Kansas City is trying to establish a running game. That's why they got Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the draft, because they know teams are going to keep doing this, and we got to run them out of it. Why did it work more? I think it's because, and we talked about this late last week also, that the Eagles, if you play that cover 2 and you keep everything underneath you, you're basically telling your defensive players you're just tacklers. We don't think that you're playmakers. We think that you're just tacklers. And I think that after 4 games, I think that the players were buying into the idea that this is all we are. We're tacklers, and we can't do anything else but tackle. We're not good cover people, and as long as a team is patient, we're gonna do that. And I think part of it also is, as we mentioned, Darnold is a guy who will take some chances. Hey, Patrick Mahomes knows if you sit in cover 2, he'll throw a bunch of dink and dunks all day, and he's gotten used to that. Sam Darnold wants to prove to people that he's a good quarterback, so when you start to do that against him, he'll start to force passes. And I think when you do press coverage also, same thing will happen. So I think the Eagles had a great game plan in that sense.
You take a look at the front 4, or who out, they rotate a couple guys in there, but Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, those 2 guys, how were they able to kind of disrupt Carolina's offense?
I think again, doing a lot of you wouldn't call them stunts or slants, where you're taking different angles to get to the quarterback. And I think they knew that Darnold, especially, he doesn't handle pressure very well. And I think if you do a lot of confusing things up front, I think that the Carolina offensive line doesn't handle that well. I didn't like, and I don't mean to nitpick the Eagles, but there was a lot of things to not like about this game. I didn't like how they were playing the running game.
Please share.
Okay, a number of them. Same stupid mistakes. I didn't like the where Hurts gets the ball on the snap over his head, and I don't know what he's doing there, trying to push the ball around. I didn't like that. I didn't like the way they played run defense very well. I have a few things of that nature, just undisciplined errors, like when the guy slid down and Singleton comes up and hits him. It gets a late. It's kind of a chintzy call, but you give it to them. Having said that, I still like the game plan they had on defense, and I love their special teams. My gosh, the special teams with the block punt and the long field goal and a number of other things that they did. That's easily the best special teams game that they've had, because they've had some of the worst special teams in the league first 4 weeks of the season, and expected points added. And this is the first time you can say, hey, they've had an impact in that area.
All right. Well, obviously the defense was a big factor. It had been a big problem. I don't know. I had mentioned on my show Friday, Casey, that you played Atlanta, San Francisco, not great offenses. You went toe-to-toe with them with your defense. You played Dallas and Kansas City. They've got pretty good offenses. You obviously – now, it's not acceptable to give up 40, but you're not on their level. Carolina, so what is the Eagles' defense in your mind through 5 games? What have we seen and found out about who they are and what they can be?
I think I just mentioned, I think they need to be a more aggressive defense. That if you talk about being multiple says, okay, we're not just going to sit by and do one gap. We're going to do 2 gapping. We're going to do 4-3. We're going to be 3-4. You do those things so you can not just give people a different front or a different look. That's fine to give a different look. You're wanting your players to be aggressive in whatever they're doing. Because even if you sit back and you play spot drop zone, if you play it the right way, it can be an aggressive defense. If you're playing pattern match coverage, some teams will play it they play kind of soft at it. We looked at the Patriots over the years under Belichick. Their pattern match coverages were aggressive as can be. They got after teams. And I think this is the first time that they've had again a defense that said we can go after an offense. And I think again they said we need to be passive. Look, Dallas and Kansas City are 2 very good offenses. I think they said we need to be passive against them and just prevent the big play rather than making the big play. And I think embracing the idea of making the big play would help them. Let's say they go up against Dallas next time. Make some big plays this time. Don't just sit back and hope you can prevent a big play, because making the big play made all the difference. If they don't get 3 picks in this game, they don't win.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, because their offense was inept. Why is the offense continuing to be a problem? Is it Jalen Hurts? Is it the play caller? Do they not have good enough weapons? Is it the injuries on the offensive line? A lot to unpack there, but who stands at the top as to why that offense looked inept yesterday?
Because they won't run the football. They will not run the football. I did an analysis today for the Athletic and looked over the past 3 weeks. I'm going to forget a couple of these names off the top of my head, but over the past 3 weeks, guys like Khalil Herbert and Peyton Barber and a bunch of backup running backs. So like 5 backup running backs are listed in a write-up about the Eagles that have more carries than Sanders over the past 3 weeks. Now, I know Sanders, look, he made some bad mistakes, not going out of bounds late in the game there when he should have went out of bounds a couple of times. Yeah, twice. And they got to bring Gainwell in to get him. And they told him, you could tell, they told Sanders to do that. So there's mental.
Do they not trust him? Is that something that suggests we see this coming? The fumbles he's had some drops. Is that them saying we just don't trust you to run our offense through you?
Yeah, but if you're just running midline inside zone plays, you can trust him for that. I mean, I know Bud Grant used to talk about that. If you had, even Parcells said the same thing. Parcells said if you have a player like Bud Grant used to say, if you have a kicker and he has a bad game, if you know he's a good kicker, you just forget about it. Parcells said if you have a good running back,
Crosby yesterday.
Exactly. You do those things. If you know Miles Sanders can give you breakaways in a way that nobody else can, you can't trust Gainwell to be a bell cow. You're not playing Scott at all, so you've got to go with Sanders. If he's your guy and he has a fumble, don't let it get to you. They don't want to run the football. They want to throw the football, and they need to pass. They need to run the football because that's who they are. I think that frustrates Sanders too, because he says, I'm good enough to funnel this running game through, and you won't do it. And so when he does get opportunities, I think it gets in his head. So I think they just need to be able to run the football. Having said that, that's not what you want to do this week. We'll talk about that later. But generally speaking, they need to run the football because that's who they are as an offense. They don't have the talent to be a pass-centric team.
Yeah, I know that Hurts obviously did not have a great game yesterday. Some people suggest, that the coach doesn't trust him. Just a lot of wide receiver screens, everything short. When he takes some shots down the field, he connected with Watkins. Look, he doesn't have a great arm. He's not going to be Josh Allen hosing it down the field. But when you see the way Sirianni's calling plays, what does that say about what he thinks about his quarterback?
I wonder, because in the second half, there were 3 different zone read plays where he had Hurts keeping the ball. And one of them scored the touchdown on, and he got like a 20, 30-yard run in the third quarter. There were some big plays he got out of that. And I'm looking at those, and I'm going, well, that worked. And you can see Carolina's defense, they're supposed to protect the outside gap, what's called the C gap. You're supposed to protect the C gap. The C gap defenders in all those plays just came crashing down and left it wide open. And it makes me think that either A, they made an in-game adjustment, or B, what I think is more likely, they said, we know they might be susceptible to this, and we're going to wait for a time in the ball game to call this. But if you know they're susceptible to it, you're only going to use it a couple, 3 different times. If I'm doing that, I'll keep doing it and saying, fine, if you guys are not going to protect the C gap, I'm going to take and run Hurts in that gap all the time. And then when you start to protect the C gap, fine, that's when you can start running the inside zone even more effectively. So makes me wonder if what they did for that particular play, but either it's a good adjustment or you held it, but either way, you didn't use it as much as you should have, which is a concern.
All right, last thought on this Eagles game. Obviously the offensive line has been a mess, but are they a problem?
I keep coming back to every time I grade them out. It's hard to grade when you only run the ball, 9 times a game. It's hard to get good grades.
Have you ever seen a team that runs the ball 9 times? Like literally, you've been doing this for how long? Have you ever seen a team run the ball this little?
The Patriots on occasion with Brady and things, but no, not especially not when they had usually if a team runs the ball this little, it's because they didn't either have good running backs or they have bad blocking. It's one of the two, or they're facing a defense like facing the Patriots or the Bucks this week. Yeah, you may not run the ball much because they have such a strong run defense. Otherwise, though, there was no reason not to run the ball in this matchup, and why they haven't been able to do it. And the grades have been in that limited sample size. The blocking grades are still good. They're still getting good run blocking, and when you can run those zone reads, if you're running it effectively, that just spikes your good blocking rate too, because only a couple of players can impact that play negatively. So I still think the Eagles need to go and do that. I think it's going to be up to Sirianni. He's going to stand up and say, I want to run the ball more, or this is what I'm going to do. And it may take, I mean this in all the most respectful way, it may be that he has to get in trouble in his job and think maybe I'm going to have to lose my job, and then say I'm going to do it the way I want to do it because I'm going to get fired either way. Because if he keeps trying to do this just to keep the owner or somebody else in the organization happy by passing the ball, they're going to keep having games where they're losing games they ought to win.
One thought, every game, Casey Joyner. Let's take a look back at week 5 in the NFL. But first, tonight we got Colts and Ravens. Ravens obviously at home. Colts getting off to a disappointing start. And I guess some injuries have been a problem for both these teams.
They have. It's interesting tonight that the Ravens are going to be using Tyson Williams back as their third down back. Fantasy managers want to know that they're not going to go with Le'Veon Bell. It says that they're going to be still a very run heavy team. They got a lot of offensive line injuries, but Joe D'Alessandro is a great offensive line coach for them. He's one of the best in the league, probably every bit as good as Jeff Stoutland. And they're going to be able to pound that football. And I just think the Colts, I think they've got too many injuries of their own, and Wentz is still playing like Carson Wentz. I get the Ravens winning this one.
All right, one thought every game, the Sunday matchups. Let's take a look back at what happened. The Jets early morning, they went to England to play the Falcons. Ugly game, between two teams, but the Falcons get their second win of the year. And Matt Ryan, 342 yards. Kyle Pitts, who said rookie tight ends can't get the job done?
They can get the job done if the top 2 receivers are out and the other team is missing both of its starting safeties. You give Kyle Pitts that kind of setup, he's going to go ahead and get big games. So kudos to them, but I think a lot of that had to do with injuries.
All right, that game obviously was the London game. Then we got some great ones. Packers, Bengals. I mean, obviously the Packers go on the road. They missed a lot of field goals. They kicked the field goal in overtime to win, but I think this game might be more about who the Bengals might be.
Yeah, who the Bengals might be. I mean, they've got to find ways to win games like this. I mean, the kickers are as bad as they are and such, but they're going to need to find out too, because Mixon's banged up and now they might have some other issues. They're going to have to be a more Joe Burrow-centric offense, and they can do some good things, but Joe Burrow sometimes looks like a young quarterback who takes too many chances, and that's a team that can't afford to do that. So be curious to see where they go in the next few weeks.
All right, the Lions, obviously an emotional Dan Campbell after the game. They fall to 0-5. The Vikings get the win 2-3. Kirk Cousins, 274. Madison fills in for Cook, had a big day for me and my fantasy team. So did Justin Jefferson on my fantasy team. But the Vikings get their second win of the year.
I tell you, he's one of my favorite coaches just because he cares that much about winning. He is so, and you heard him, what I liked about it, and this will sell very well in this locker room. He said, you could tell he said, I feel so bad for those players in there. He wants them to get the win. Those players are going to keep playing hard for him. That's going to be if he keeps going forward with this approach, that's going to be Detroit team in a year or two. People aren't going to want to play because their talent's finally going to match up to what the coaching is.
Yeah, I know the Lions do fight hard. They seem to be in the right direction. They just don't have the players right now. Pittsburgh, everybody's been down on them. They get a win at home against a Bronco team that a lot of people like. Bridgewater's back, not enough. Ben Roethlisberger said, my demise, not so fast.
He did. He looked better. Their run blocking looked a lot better, though, too. Najee Harris getting in there, and they're finding ways to get him involved both in the passing game and in the running game. That's big. It's bad for them to lose Juju, but they got a lot of depth at receiver, and their defense finally started to play a bit better. It's starting to look better. And plus, mind you, they get Seattle this week, a banged-up Seattle team, and in a couple weeks, they've got another favorable matchup as well. So the Steelers could end up being they could get a couple wins here to turn their season around and get back to what we think they should be.
All right, Bucks all over the Dolphins, 45-17. Obviously, the Bucks will be here in Philly on Thursday night. Brady, 5 touchdowns, 411 yards, yawn. Leonard Fournette has a big game. Antonio Brown, Bucks roll. Dolphins have all sorts of problems.
Dolphins have tons of problems with the secondary. The Bucks, as banged up as the secondary is, they still have a couple of really good players, and that really helped them. And the idea that Brady throws for 405 touchdowns at 45 years old, and he hurt his thumb during the game. I mean, the guy's just a phenom.
Saints go on the road. They beat the Washington football team. What's wrong with their defense? They give up 33 in the game. Winston throws the ball 30 times, 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, and Winston is one of those they're going to call situational plays. He only threw the ball 30 times yesterday, a season high for him, but that's still not a pass-centric offense. So they're going to win by running and doing vertical passes on occasion and defense. But that's the thing for Washington. You got to figure you're facing a team that can't pass the ball very well, and they still hit you with all those passes. It's a combination of scheme, and it's a combination of a lack of talent, and they've got some big problems. And when the head coach has to talk about why he's not going to call defensive plays, if you're the defensive coordinator, rent, don't buy.
One thought every game. Casey Joyner taking a look at what's next. And we've got, I was going to say the Boston Patriots. It's the New England Patriots up against the Houston Texans. This was a fight for a while. The Texans had a lead, and the Patriots come back with 10 points in the fourth. They shut out the Texans in that frame. Your boy Davis Mills had a big game.
Hey, I was bashing Davis Mills this past week, and he did. He hit a couple of big plays on the run. Making plays, not called plays, but manufactured plays, but those count too. Here's the thing. David Culley, the Houston head coach, he's doing every bit as good of a job as Dan Campbell at getting his team to play really hard. He's just doing it with a more low-key method, and he's not talking about biting kneecaps. But that Houston team, if nothing else, they are fighting very hard for their coach and for each other. It's a good sign for them. And I think they'll get a win or two this year that people don't think they're going to get, and they almost got it yesterday.
All right, Casey Joyner, one thought every game, week 5, Titans go on the road. They lost to the Jets on the road, so people were wondering, well, they hammered that way really early. Big second quarter, 37-19. They beat the Jags.
Yeah, Jags have lack of talent, and now I didn't get the sense that they gave up, but I thought it was interesting in the post game. Urban Meyer was talking about, well, this is why we didn't call a quarterback sneak, and they asked Trevor Lawrence. He said, we haven't practiced it, and I'm not sure that Lawrence is comfortable with it. And they asked Trevor Lawrence, he's like, no, I'm comfortable with it. I played quarterback a while. I could run a sneak. When you've got that kind of a disconnect between your coaches and your players, it's going to be a long season. They're only the second team in NFL history now to lose 20 games in a row if you don't count the Cardinals in the mid-40s who switched a bunch of teams around and things. So they've got a shot, the Jags do, at breaking the Bucks, the 76-77 Bucks record of 26 losses in a row. They've got a shot at doing that.
Here come the Bears. They win again. They go on the road this time to beat the Raiders. Raiders were 3-0. They're now 3-2. Bears had so many problems. All of a sudden, they're 3-2, and things don't seem as bad for Matt Nagy's crew. They win 20-9.
Their offense still stinks, but I was surprised that I do. It does. It's terrible that you look at their numbers. They have the worst passing game, lowest pass attempts, worst vertical rate. Just you can go in a number of metrics. The thing is, it surprised me. I was doing my start sit charts this week for my fantasy service, and I saw Chicago was like the top rated defense. And I had to go back and look like Chicago. Their defense stunk the first few weeks, and I kept looking at the metrics, going, "No, that's about right. They're playing quite well. That defense is playing that well." And mind you, they've got injuries in the running game, but if they can keep their run game going, the defense is playing this well, they don't need a lot of big plays in the passing game. And you know, maybe this is a team that's not going to be quite as bad as people think. Although, again, if it weren't for Davis Mills, I'm thinking Justin Fields might be the worst quarterback right now. He's the most limited quarterback. They just don't have a lot they could do with him.
Maybe the game of the day. Chargers go to 4-1, 47-42 over the Browns. Herbert, 398 yards, 4 touchdowns. Huge game for Chubb, 161. Mike Williams, 165. He was on my fantasy team too, by the way. I had a pretty good week fantasy-wise. Chargers 47, Browns 42. A great, epic, entertaining game.
1,000+ yards in that game. And you came into the game thinking, okay, well, Baker Mayfield's banged up, and the Browns, they don't have the big passing game. Well, they were able to go with the shootout, but it says something about them that they're not going to be able to keep up in that kind of a shootout contest. And it says something for the Chargers. They've been winning a lot with defense, and their offense has been playing well, very well. But now it shows that if they have to get in that kind of game, they can do that. So kudos to them. A lot of that also had to do Cleveland defense is really banged up in that contest.
Couple more. One thought every game. Dallas 44, Giants 20. Dallas 4-1. Giants banged up all over the place. But Prescott 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Zeke 110, 1 touchdown. Big game for Kadarius Toney, but too many weapons for the Cowboys.
Too many, and their defense is playing better. Obviously, Diggs is a great ball hawk, but the rest of the defense is starting to catch up. They've got a much better run defense. And what I'd like to see out of the Cowboys, though, they still seem to – they've got an offensive identity. Offensive identity is we're just going to score as many points as possible. I would still like to see them be – okay, we're gonna get a lead and grind you out. They sort of are doing that, but I still get the impression that they're trying to be too flashy. And they kind of remind me of that Vikings team with that went 15-1 and things, and lean a little too heavy on offense when you ought to be protecting your defense. And they need to get in that mode now, because going to still need to protect that defense, I think, down the road, because there are some coverage weaknesses there.
Couple more. Cardinals get to 5-0. Ugly win over the Niners, but you need ugly wins. Trey Lance was an ugly QB, although he did have 89 yards rushing. Big day for the Murray-Hopkins. Not a big day for Murray, but a big hook up there. Hopkins went up and really saved the day there, 17-10.
Yeah, great catch on the underthrown ball to come back to it and things. I always wonder why people, when a head coach says, we don't think the rookie's ready to play, people are like, oh, well, he just doesn't want to play the rookie. He just doesn't want to play. It's like, do you think if a coach thinks the rookie's ready to play, that he's going to play him? Yeah, if a coach tells you, look, this guy might not be ready, maybe we should listen to him, because Trey Lance yesterday, yeah, he showed us why Shanahan was going with Garoppolo, because Garoppolo is the better quarterback right now, and that's why Garoppolo is going to be the starter when he comes back.
Last one thought every game. Bills. Did they show last night that they're the best team in the league? 38-20, Josh Allen, 315, 3 touchdowns. Dawson Knox, 3 catches for 117. I tried to pick him up. My team was too good. I was too high on the waiver wire.
Dawson Knox, he's been doing that for a few weeks now. 3rd-round pick, and he didn't look like he was going to be anything. But he's that tight end who comes out of nowhere to post huge fantasy points. You tend to get one of those every year. I think that game, and this is to take nothing away from the Bills, because the Bills are playing good on both sides of the ball, that game says more about who the Chiefs are than who the Bills are. The Chiefs have a terrible defense this year. I saw a post on Twitter. I retweeted on Twitter. I forget who posted it, but said over the past 3 games, the Chiefs have 11 turnovers on offense and no turnovers forced on defense. You're just not going to win very many games when you do that. That's it, and that's where the Chiefs are right now. They're having to get into shootouts, and they don't want to, and that's who they are. And when you lose CEH, now they're going to have even more problems. So I think the Chiefs are in the room for a long season. I still think the Bills haven't seen their best test of the year, because this was supposed to be it, but it wasn't.
When you say long season, does that mean no playoffs?
They're a tough division. You've got the extra playoff team, the extra wild card. I think they've got a shot for that. But this is, can they catch the Chargers? It's if they lose one to the Chargers, I would think they're going to be too far back. So I think they're 3 back right now. I think they could miss the playoffs. I think it's entirely possible. I think they're maybe 50-50 shot right now to make the playoffs the way they're playing.
One thought every game. Casey Joyner right there, week 5. in the books. And, of course, well, not in the books. We got one more tonight, Colts and Ravens right here on 97.3 ESPN. And, obviously, Casey's back on Friday with one thought on every game, and we'll recap the Eagles and the Bucs. So, real quick, give me a quick thought. I know you really haven't dove into that game too much, but Eagles, Bucs, initial thought is
that this is finally the game where Sirianni is going to be rewarded for passing, or at least the game plan is going to allow him to do that, because the Bucs have a ton of secondary injuries and you do not want to run the ball against them. So I don't think they can get into a shootout, but frankly, that's probably the only chance they have to win this game, because they can't lean on the ground game of this one.
all right. There you go. Casey Joyner's back on Friday with one thought on every game. All right, pal. We'll see you then.
Appreciate it.
All right, Casey Joyner here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. You can download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. When we come back, we'll look at the NFC East and the Eagles win over the Panthers. Jeff Kerr, he tweeted out something yesterday. He compared this Eagles team to an Eagles team of the past. Does he want to take it back? I'll ask him coming up next here on the Sports Bash. Casey Joyner is brought to you by Cape Regional Health System. For a healthier life, call 609-463-CAPE. Jeff Kerr is on the other side. Does he want to take this tweet back? I'm going to ask him coming up next here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. They won ugly. A win is a win. Winning ugly in the NFL happens. But what does it mean for this team moving forward? We'll get into that, the NFC East and more. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, as he joins us now. Now, something Jeff Kerr tweeted yesterday, I want to ask him about, and does he still feel the same way? Jeff Kerr is with me live right now on the Sports Bash, as he is each and every Monday here after an Eagles win. It feels like a win, loss. I don't know. That was an ugly one. You tweeted, Jeff Kerr, that this Eagles team is bad, like 1998 bad. Is that still the way you feel about this team, even after a win?
Keep in mind, this is the second quarter when I tweeted this. So, we got to put a timestamp on these things. But the 1998 Eagles did not start 2-3. I'll say that. And they actually had a pulse on offense. They did not average 10 points per game. But midway through the second quarter, I was like, you know what? This is bad. Like, this is a really bad football team. And give credit to the head coach, give credit to the defense, give credit to the quarterback. They got them out of this, and they got them a win they needed. And no, I don't think they're 98 Eagles bad. I don't know if they're not a good football team. I think it can be an average football team. I think they're going to beat teams that are at around their talent level. We just haven't seen that many of them yet. Atlanta, Carolina, Tampa Bay, they're a world above them. I just got done talking to Rob Gronkowski about the Eagles, and they're definitely not taking Philadelphia lightly. So that's something to keep an eye on for Thursday night. But, after this Raiders game, which again, I think they can challenge them. Schedule gets a little bit easier, so we'll see what this team is made of going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned you got to give the coaches some credit. Let's go to John Gannon, because this defense, 83 points over 2 weeks. We kept wondering, is this guy overmatched? Is he, over his head? What impressed you about what John Gannon did with his defense yesterday?
So one thing I liked was he had, and I think it was more the matchup, he had Darius Slay shadowing DJ Moore. And DJ Moore only had like 3 catches for 14 yards or something like that off Darius Slay. It was a pretty impressive performance by the Eagles quarterback. He blitzed a little more than usual. The Eagles still don't blitz that much. I think they only actually send people 8.9% of the time, which is by far the fewest in the NFL. That's not good. But overall, he did blitz a little more. I thought he set up one-on-one matchups for Fletcher Cox, which really helped. I think Josh Sweat was a little more aggressive going after the quarterback. And look, Alex Singleton, he still struggles against the pass, but I thought he was a little more aggressive in Sunday's game as well. I wanted to see a little more aggression out of this defense. It doesn't mean necessarily they have to blitz, but you got to like what you saw. And I think against teams like Carolina and teams that aren't the Kansas City Chiefs, aren't the Dallas Cowboys, aren't the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on offense, I think you're going to see a team that can hold their own.
Something I brought up last week is exactly that, Jeff, is that, look, you played Dallas, you played Kansas City, and you got Rochambeau. Well, those two teams have elite weapons. When you have teams that don't have elite weapons and have average quarterback play, this defense can keep you in the game. They didn't keep you in the game yesterday. They won you the damn game yesterday.
Exactly, and they kept that team in the, adding on to this. They did keep them in the game in a sense, too, because, and like you said, this all correlates to the win, because this game could have been really ugly. I thought the play of the game was, and I didn't write this in my takeaways, it was kind of an underrated play, but Sam Darnold throwing that deep ball to Robbie Anderson and Devontae Maddox broke it up. That's a play that you show young defensive backs in the film room. This is what I want you to do. Right there. That's what you have to do. Perfect technique, perfect read of the ball. That kept the Eagles in the football game. And really, Carolina didn't do much after that.
Yeah, you're right. There was a big play by Avonte Maddox down the seam, was able to, close and make a big play there. And then one of the plays I think is underrated as well, that probably, was that 3rd down and 2 where they get a stop there and force Carolina to have to kick a field goal. They had not been getting stops on 3rd down. Jannard Avery made the play.
Yeah, of all people. I mean, it just seemed like everybody on defense that needed to make a play made a play. Steve Nelson, 3rd and 15. You give up the 1st down. I'm thinking to myself, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing here? And then 2 plays later, he knows the exact route, jumps it, and gets the interception that essentially sealed the win. I mean, it just seemed like anytime someone made a mistake on Sunday on that defensive side of the ball, they made up with it with a play like 2 or 3 plays. Like the Eagles defense totally outclassed the Carolina offense on Sunday.
Yeah, which I don't know that we thought going in because, this is a team last week scored 28 points against Dallas. They, held their own offensively against Dallas, but they looked inept for the most part on defense. Let's flip over to the Eagle offense because we talk about inept. That was inept yesterday. How can Nick Sirianni, I don't even think it's, I think how can he help himself? What can he do to help himself here?
It seems like the age-old answer, doesn't it, Mike? Run the football. I mean, does it kill you to actually run the football? Not RPOs don't count as runs to me. Yeah, okay, they may start as runs, but you're ultimately not running the football. Give Miles Sanders and give Kenny Gainwell some carries, and maybe defenses will start crowding the box a little more so Jalen Hurts can find Quez Watkins and Devonta Smith and Jalen Reagor up top, and then you can get the deep play going. It just seemed like the game didn't really take shape until Hurts found Watkins on that great throw, great catch, that 53-yard pass. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates open up because Jalen Hurts decided, you know what, I'm going to use my legs more. I'm going to do this. I think that's how you help Jalen Hurts. I think that's how you help this offense. You allow Jalen Hurts to make plays with his feet, make plays on the run, and you run the football to keep these defenses honest because that pass-to-run ratio was atrocious yesterday. Again.
Let me get your Penn State guy. You saw a lot of Miles Sanders. There's, he was the backup to Saquon Barkley, and a lot of people thought, hey, he would be much more known and better had he not been the guy who was the backup. Do they not trust him?
I'm trying.
He runs out of bounds twice. He has to get benched for it. Is that a sign, though, of what they think? Like, we can't trust this guy. That's why you don't carry the ball. That's why we don't lean on you.
Yeah, 2 of them, I thought. The second one was a boneheaded play, no doubt. First one, I thought he got pushed out back. But again, why is Nick Sirianni calling a play where that kind of forces him out of balance? Like, and Sanders got to know. You got to stay in there. But the second one was inexcusable. You have to go down there. And you gave Carolina 2 extra timeouts pretty much. Like, that game was not in hand yet. And yeah, I think that's what it is. I just don't think they trust him catching the ball. I don't think they trust him in pass protection. And look, this coach did not draft him. The GM did, and I think they should play him more because he's a home run threat. I don't think he's a number 2 running back. I think people are crazy when they think that. It just seems to me like, not that Miles Sanders is checking out, because I don't think that, but if you're Miles Sanders, you got to start thinking to yourself, what do I got to do here? Like, every time I come in now, it seems like there's more of a chances for me to make an error than to actually come in and do something good because I just don't get the football enough.
Let me get your thoughts. The offensive line had all sorts of issues last year. Yesterday, Mailata at right, Dillard at left. They didn't grade out all that well as a group. But as you tweeted, Dillard 1 pressure in 47 snaps. Over 3 weeks, Dillard has 7 pressures, 160 attempts. How has this offensive line affected the offense, if at all?
Well, I think they've been okay. And again, okay is better than with anything they had last year. Like, look, Andre Dillard is better at left tackle. He just is. He's not going to go to the right side. He just can't play over there. And he's been fine in pass protection. Look, besides 2 plays to Hassan Reddick, I thought Jordan Mailata held his own at right tackle. And it looks like he'll probably be playing right tackle on Thursday night because I don't know if Lane Johnson's ever coming back. So, again, that's something you got to look out for. They do miss Brandon Brooks. They do miss Isaac. Isaac Seumalo was a stud this year. Brandon Brooks started out the year really well. They do miss them. They are playing with 2 backup guards. But look, Jack Driscoll is learning. And again, I think he's a really solid prospect for them. He's getting the valuable reps because they're going to have to rely on him at some point. And look, I just think Jason Kelce is better with Brandon Brooks and Isaac Seumalo next to him. But he's still having an okay year. Collectively, as an offensive line, I think they've been okay. But if you want to go individually, I think these guys have been good.
Yeah, I know. I agree, because, and I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know what's going to happen with Lane Johnson. But if Lane Johnson is out for an extended, do they just stick with Mailata at right tackle?
I think they do. I think that is the best combination going forward. You put your 5 best linemen on the field. This isn't the Doug way where Jordan Mailata plays left tackle and Jack Driscoll plays right tackle and Nate Herbig plays right guard. Well, no, because if you can have Andre Dillard and Jordan Mailata and protect both bookends, you do that. And you're going to need that this week when you face Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett. So, again, Tampa's going to come after this team. And you're going to need Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard to play their best. And I think they can. I think now that Jordan Mailata's got a week under his belt at right tackle, and look, I know old school people say, well, he's the left tackle. He's played left tackle. No. These days, offensive linemen can play both sides. Jason Peters, I actually think, would have played right tackle if the Eagles would have asked him back in his prime.
All right. Obviously, there's a lot of other things in this game that we can kind of hit on real quick, but I want to hit on the fact that late in the game, Hurts made a couple of plays, but how did you think Hurts played overall in the game?
Well, if I had to grade him, it's in the B's. Probably a B- because it wasn't a great performance statistically. But when you needed Jalen Hurts to make a play for you on Sunday, you made a couple of them. The throw to Quez Watkins, running for a touchdown, the 2-point conversion to Devonta Smith, running for 2 touchdowns. It's a collective body of work, and I'm not going to judge the kid through 9 starts. But you asked me for this week again. B-. Look, he got a fourth quarter comeback. He got a win. That's a game Carson Wentz does not win last year, people. He doesn't win it. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that can do what Jalen Hurts can do, and you have to use his mobility. I'm getting tired of people writing off this guy through 9 career starts. I didn't realize every NFL writer was an NFL quarterback at some point. Oh, by the way, I'm hearing Patrick Mahomes sucks today, and I had to prove them wrong. So.
Well, that's asinine, to say the least.
Yeah,
Let's go into the NFC East real fast. Obviously, Giants are a mash unit yesterday. But look, they just don't have the horses, man. You lose the quarterback, you lose your 2 receivers, you lose your running back. Their line already stinks. I mean, that's an uphill battle in that game against Dallas.
I felt bad for him. Like, everybody got hurt.
I never feel bad for the Giants. It warms my heart that they stink, but I got to keep it real. I mean, they went to a gunfight with a knife.
What a freak injury by Saquon Barkley, too. He just runs around and the play's dead, and all of a sudden he trips over a defender trips over the end. What are the odds of that happening? I mean, Daniel Jones, that one could have probably been prevented. You got to know sometimes when to go down. And, you basically let Jabril Cox just hit you there. So, again, though, but they have injuries across the board. And like you said, the offensive line stinks. I don't think anybody's stopping Dallas this year defensively. They're just a calamity of errors. You know what, Mike? I don't even know who they play next week, to be honest with you, because I don't think it matters. They're 1-4, and I just think they're going to get worse.
The Giants play the Rams next week.
Oh God, yeah, 1-5.
No, their schedule coming up is brutal. They've got a brutal schedule coming up. There's no question about it. Washington and the Giants' schedule coming up is absolutely brutal. So I think you're going to see those 2 teams kind of vanish away, and I think Dallas will start moving away. I think Philadelphia, realistically, is in that wild card. They got to hope to be in the wild card mix.
Washington, they're such a disappointment this year.
That defense, man, what happened?
I don't know, like Jameis Winston, and look, I gotta give everybody remembers the week 2 game by Jameis Winston where he was awful. He's actually been pretty good the other 4 games, but you cannot let that Hail Mary go. You can't. And this has just been them all year. They're paper tigers right now.
Here's the thing, Jeff. I know it's early to talk playoffs, but you look at Kansas City last night and what that game meant to them playoff-wise. They're in trouble with the tiebreakers and all that stuff. Philadelphia wins that game. Right now, Carolina is the 7th team, and you beat them head-to-head.
Yeah.
You know who's in the playoffs right now if it were to start? Chicago.
And they're only 3-2. Oh, by the way, you play them this year. So
Philly does not play Chicago.
I thought they do.
Nope, they've got, but they do have Carolina. They do have the Saints, and they do play Washington twice, obviously. So right now in front of you is the non-division leaders right now are the Rams, the Bears, Carolina, and the Saints, and Washington and Minnesota. So at 2 and 3, you're only like the second wild card team. I think you're going to be in the mix with the second wild card team right now.
I'll say this, Mike. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be Tampa because I don't think they're going to.
No, I don't think so either, Jeff. And I say Tampa, the Chargers, and Dallas. Right now, those are 3 teams left on your schedule that you're going to struggle with. The rest of this schedule, it's a lot of winnable opportunities. I'm not saying you're going to be favored or should win. I'm saying just like Carolina, that's a winnable opportunity. And they won that game on the road. They're going to get some of these now. They play the Raiders on the road. They play Detroit on the road. They play Denver on the road.
I'll say this. If they're 4-4 after 8 games, they have a shot because of that schedule. And I think that's all, as a fan, you can ask for. Because right now, I got what I wanted. I said if they were 2-4 after 6 games, they'd be okay. Well, they're 2-3 after 5. So Thursday night's a crapshoot. And again, Tom Brady pointed this out yesterday at his post-game news conference. Hey, we know what happened last year when we played Chicago. We were the better team and we lost. They know now, I think, what it takes to play on a short week, but still, they know they have to go on the road. This is a trap game for them. Rob Gronkowski told me, this isn't a team you take lightly. This is a good football team that's getting better every week. And he said, they're coming off a big win. There's momentum on their side. And he said, look, Gronk said, I think they're well coached. I think their defense is very good. They get after the quarterback. He said, Tom gets rid of the ball quick, but he's going to have to get rid of the ball quicker this week.
He's not wrong about that. The Eagles' off defense now here the difference is Carolina's offensive line not very good. Tampa's line's pretty good.
That's very good. I mean,
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, NFL Week 5 in the books, a little NFC East conversation. We'll do it again on Wednesday to get you ready for the Eagles and the Buccaneers right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Jeff, we'll talk to you Wednesday, pal.
Yeah, sounds good. So I have a question for you, quick, Mike. We will be here. Will Ben Simmons be here on Wednesday?
I don't know. I'll be at the game tonight. I'll tell you if I see him.
I was supposed to go tonight, but preseason games, they just don't do it.
When I heard the Simmons news, I got to go up there and talk to some of my sources. I got to get some information.
There you go.
All
That's
right, man.
to look at.
Take care. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, download the free mobile app. It's free in the Apple Store or Google Play. And if you have the app on your phone, well, you can enter to win Eagles-Bucks tickets at any time. But you only have till tomorrow to win those tickets. So, what was the event of the weekend? We asked you at 973 ESPN on Twitter. I'm going to go back to the weekend, see your responses coming up next here on the Sports Bash. And don't forget, coming up, game night, Josh will go back through the Eagles and NFL and college football. And I don't think he watched any baseball, and I know he didn't see the fight, but I saw all of them. And I'll do a quick weekend review coming up next. All right, so it was a wild weekend of stuff that happened. But first, Sports Bash brought to you by Deborah Heart and Lung Center. When it's your heart, you can't take chances. Be sure, demand Deborah.org. All right, it was a wild weekend in the NFL. It was a wild weekend in college football. The baseball on Sunday night was unbelievable. The boxing match, though, to me, was probably the best sports event of the weekend. Over at 97.3 ESPN on Twitter, you guys said the Eagles win and the college football upsets were the biggest events of the weekend, with Wilder Fury getting 20% of the votes. And I would say, I don't think enough people saw Wilder Fury. That's why.
That's probably a huge part of it. I think the other part of it might be the fact that I think people might have forgot it was even on.
That too. They didn't see it. They forgot it was on. There were so many college football games, but it was a great weekend. Eagles win.
Are your Rays going to survive?
I hope so, but that was an unfortunate way to lose. Now, I don't know who's pitching. Who's the pitching matchup tonight? Did they announce the pitchers? I would imagine they did. I haven't seen that, but both teams went for it yesterday. Boston got the win. That game is tonight. Josh has game night up next.